Okay, that was one of the musical clips from Nepali music. Okay, still we have a couple of minutes away from the program. We'll be starting in a few minutes. So we will play another video clips, I guess music. What do you think, Dr. Wright?
Oh, yes, I would encourage just any of the one of the selections
Sure.
that I had sent.
All right.
Since I just arrived.
Sure. So let's try this one. Great. I guess that we are checking the audios and everyone can hear us. And we are almost about to start the program. So, Dr. Gonley, you can hear us, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Loud and
you. All right. Great. Awesome. Then we start. Thank you very much. Good evening, distinguished guests, university presidents, vice chancellor, rectors, STAR president, vice president, faculty colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Krishna Bista, Associate Professor of Higher Education at Morgan State University, located in Maryland. I'm also Vice President of Educational Services at STAR Scholars Network. In this role, I have been fortunate to collaborate with hundreds of scholars, including my own graduate students, in their research and publications, particularly publishing over 2,000 research articles in 8 different journals and several book projects. I'm also the founding editor of the Journal of International Student, one of the flagships quarterly publication at STAR Scholars Network. On behalf of the STAR Scholars Network, it is a great privilege for me to welcome all of you to this year's Global Connection Awards and the STAR Conference closing ceremony. In particular, I would like to welcome Professor Noam Chomsky, Professor Henry Giraud, AACU President Pasquarella, Professor George Box, President Glasper from League for Innovation, President Stuber from Association of Governing Boards, AIU Secretary Mittal, Vice Chancellor Sharma from Nepal Open University, President LeBlanc from Southern New Hampshire, President Wilson from Morgan State, Vice Chancellor Raj from OP Jindal Global University, Professor Jewel from USIM, and other distinguished guests in the ceremony. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to our outstanding STAR advisors, Dr. Vendari, Dr. Diedroff, Dr. Hammonds, Dr. Prime, Dr. Ravi, and Dr. Sutin. Also, a very big welcome to our STAR country directors, STAR fellows, and members who are watching this live event from all over the world in different time zones. First, I would like to say happy 92nd birthday to Professor Noam Chomsky, our keynote speaker of this evening and the most cited author of this century and the father of modern linguistics. And I would like to acknowledge our institutional sponsor, Morgan State University, Nepal Open University, OP Jindal Global University, and Advanced College of Engineering and Management, and the student, staff, faculty members from these institutions who worked so hard to put together this year's 3-day conference. It could not be possible to imagine this conference without your support. It is terrific to see so many familiar faces on my screen here: authors, journal editors, faculty members, students, college and university leaders, and the leaders of national and international association. It is also wonderful to have so many new faces here. We have a little over 17,000 members from all over the world, and many of you are watching us through social media live streaming. Welcome to the program. We are waiting for the big moment to hear from our invited speakers, and I hope you will enjoy the entire session. This evening, the STAR Scholars Award Committee is recognizing our outstanding scholars and their contribution to the field with the Noam Chomsky Global Connection Awards. In the last 3 days of the conference, what totally surprised me was our emerging student leaders who worked together with their faculty members for moderating 76 sessions, scheduling 82 parallel presentations with a speaker from different countries. This is one of the examples that STAR Scholar feel proud of its impacts and global outreach. In addition to rapid research and publication, and also the professional webinar series, journals, and the book projects are our strength to touch the lives of Global South scholars. Next, I would like to invite my colleague, Dr. Rajika Bhandari, an expert on international higher education and the STAR advisor, to moderate the rest of the sessions, along with Dr. Mausami Mukherjee. Welcome again. I am looking forward to the rest of the program, and thank you. Now over to you, Dr. Bhandari.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bishta, and good evening and good morning to our friends in other parts of the world, and namaskar. It's an understatement for me to say how honored and privileged I feel to be hosting and moderating this event and celebration on behalf of the Star Scholars Network. Our organizers could not have picked a more appropriate and timely theme of how to shape a more humane world at a time when there is global strife in more ways than one. I would in fact argue that we have perhaps lost our way, and it is time to shape both the future but also reshape what exists. But we have a star-studded event this evening and lots to cover. So I will leave the more profound observations and remarks to our speakers. Before we begin, let me say a word about the flow. Joining me in hosting this evening's event is Dr. Moushami Mukherjee, who is an associate professor and deputy director of the International Institute for Higher Education Research and Capacity Building at O.P. Jindal Global University in India, and also serves as the country director for India for the Star Scholars Network. Dr. Mukherjee and I will share the program between us. We will introduce all our distinguished speakers briefly, but would also invite you to take a look at their detailed bios on the event page. Let me also use this time to remind all our wonderful speakers who joined us to please keep themselves muted when they are not speaking and to please adhere to the allotted time. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first group for the evening. We will start out by hearing a recorded message from the country directors of the Star Scholars Network, followed by a brief performance by Dr. Keith Wright, a renowned music educator and performer, who also serves as the cultural director for Star Scholars. Dr. Wright will also share a brief film titled Noam, Chomsky and Nepal, the intersection of humanity, culture, and linguistics. Next, we will hear inspiring opening remarks from Dr. Uttam Gowli, who's the president of the Star Scholars Network, and then from Dr. David Wilson, president of Morgan State University and the host institution for the network. Dr. Bishta, I will turn it back over to you so that we may have the first video, please.
Sure. Okay. It's happening. I guess you can see my screen, right?
The Society of Transnational Academic Researchers, STARS Scholars Network, is an international forum of scholars that advances global social mobility by using research and advocacy. Having the vision of a humane world, the STAR mission is to carry out scholarly research related to international education, exchange programs, academic mobility, and employability, with the motto of advancing global social mobility. The Star Scholar Network facilitates dialogue forums for scholars and researchers to engage in conversations shaping educational policies. Publications of scholarly articles, think pieces, and policy briefs.
Our publications and newsletters reach more than 15,000 members around the world. Some of our journals are highest ranking academic journals in the field.
Annual STAR conferences as knowledge exchange platforms.
I have Dr. Edward Valu here, who will...
Consultations on governance, management, leadership development, and other institution-specific issues. Trainings on diversity, active learning strategies, and research methods. Trainings on publication processes. Research on education, economy, and social justice. Professional development opportunities, such as webinars and leadership workshops. To provide a forum to sponsor, host, and/or participate in events and activities that provide educational solutions.
and welcome. Welcome to our research and publication webinar series.
To provide consultations for governments and institutions for education reforms. Let's meet the STAR leadership team. We have 6 distinguished personalities as an advisory team. The 2020 STAR Conference is going to be held in the capital city of Nepal, Kathmandu, on 6th to 8th December, hosted by Nepal Open University. The major theme of the conference is Saving a Humane World, Global Perspectives on Higher Education, and have 7 other sub-themes of the conference. Let's now meet and hear from the country directors.
Hello everybody, greetings from Galicia. At the moment, my main concern is to facilitate stays abroad, welcome students and professors from other countries, and share our experiences and research in the fields of creativity, teamwork, and intercultural awareness. Being part of the STAR community is helping us a lot to know excellent initiatives from all over the world and feel highly motivated to work. Thank you for being there.
The capacity building activities which we conduct under the banner of STAR Scholars Network are basically aimed to provide a forum of scholars and researchers to engage in conversations that shape the future education policies. We do publications, we host webinars, we do conferences and link scholars with the wider research network, which not only adds multiple pairs of eyes to the work being done, but also amplifies our voices. Thus, envisioning a humane world, I therefore invite you to this event called Shaping a Humane World, Global Higher Education Perspectives. I will look forward to your participation and feedback. Goodbye.
The professional development activities, workshop, webinars, and conferences we conduct are geared toward lifting up the academic and research scholar and to make research meaningful as well as to contribute significantly to the social and economic transformations. I would like to conclude with this. STAR Scholar Network is definitely one of the best platforms we can connect and have international collaborations with researchers from different parts of the world. And this is awesome.
In line with the vision of STAR Scholar Network, South Africa will be launching an intercultural mentorship project towards enhancing the research capacity and career advancement of academics within the network. I hope to use the STAR platform to foster strong bilateral and multilateral partnership or collaboration between Africa and other countries through STAR Scholar Network South Africa. Therefore, I want to use this opportunity to wish STAR community a successful conference. Thank you.
I was working for JICA and had stationed in Nepal for 3 years before joining Tokyo Institute of Technology, so I'm very glad to know that this conference is held in Nepal. Let me tell you what I would like to do in the future. I would like to propose a survey to investigate the impact of COVID-19 on international students. In Japan, there are many Nepali students who earn their living by part-time jobs, but many of them lost jobs at restaurants and shops. It is important to listen to the voices of the vulnerables to shape humane world. Best wishes for the success of STAR Conference in Nepal.
Concerning the activities of STAR Ghana in 2023, we will be hosting a STAR conference highlighting the educational policy development in sub-Saharan Africa. You can be rest assured that the conference will be highly successful and deeply enriching. Thank you.
I'm sure all of you are having a great time at this virtual conference being hosted this year by Nepal Open University, Kathmandu, because of the pandemic. We are at the closing ceremony of this 3-day conference, and at this closing ceremony we have Professor Noam Chomsky as one of our most distinguished keynote speakers, along with several other speakers. I'm sure all of you will also have a great time at the closing ceremony and get inspired by Professor Chomsky's scholarship and public advocacy work to help shape a better, a more humane world. I look forward to welcome all of you to India sometime for the STAR conference in the future.
As an environmental engineer, I will continue to conduct research, and correspondingly, I aim to foster research collaboration for Rwandans throughout the world. That being said, my personal interest is in promoting graduate education for interested students, regardless from what discipline they may come from. It is my intent to capitalize on the great connections available through the STAR Scholars Network to further this goal. It will be great working with all of you to help get Rwandan students in touch with potential advisors from across the globe. I look forward to working with the network, as it will be a pleasure bringing its academic expertise and advocacy to Rwanda. Here's to a wonderfully successful conference.
We are very happy to be the representative of STAR Scholar Network in Vietnam.
Through the collaboration with STAR Scholar Network, we hope to promote academic and professional activities of education community in Vietnam, as well as contribute to the development of education worldwide.
Dr. Wright, over to you.
Yes. Thank you. Greetings and namaste, my distinguished STAR Scholar colleagues. I would like to thank STAR President Uttam Gol Lee for his vision to make the STAR annual conferences a celebration of human connections. You have given us a meritorious gift of joy by inviting Professor Chomsky into the STAR Scholars Network. And now, in celebration of Professor Chomsky's 97th birthday, I will perform an excerpt from the intermezzo from Pietro Mascagni's opera, Cavalleria Rusticana. Thank you. And now we're going to go on to the program. We would like to express our deepest gratitude to our sponsors, Advanced College of Engineering and Management, Morgan State University, Gateway, Niran, O.P. Jindal Global University, Non-Resident Nepali Association, Nepal Open University, Nepal Tourism Board. Special thank you to Executive Director Kapil Dev Regmi, Advanced College of Engineering and Management. Concept and direction by Mr. Prashant Tamag. Dance artist Isha Adhikari and Esha Adhikari. Camera Mani K. Rai. Artist video editor Sudasharn Chardhari. And Dr. Eric Conway, music chair and director of the Morgan State University Choir, singing Even Me. Nepal stands for never-ending peace and love.
I just know it has an unbreakable grip, but I can't tell you what it is. It's just life's empty without it.
The meaning of the traditional Nepali song. We cannot erase what's written in our fate. My heart is filled with joy after meeting you. Dance with me, my love. Flowers are blooming. Dance with me, my love. Dance with your open heart. Making the world a better place. And within the words of the language lies the transformational grammar. Even me serves as a link, and the sound itself is essential to the meaning and language of music. Language is a process of free creation. Its laws and principles are fixed, but the manner in which the principles of generation are used is free and infinitely varied. Even the interpretation and use of words involves a process of recreation. And this is what he said. Nepal must remain neutral as it is stuck between China, a state that claims to be socialist but is not socialist, and India, which is
systematically dismantling democracy, is what he said. And in this directive, Professor Chomsky, we sense a presence of purpose and a glimpse of middle way Buddhist process, understanding of practicality, and a view of reality that avoids the extreme positions of eternalism and annihilationism. And he said, a review of the record shows that it is a near miracle that we have survived the nuclear age. There have been repeated cases when nuclear war came ominously close. Professor Chomsky calls for the need of the world to transition towards progressive internationalism as the repercussions of the world turning more authoritarian by the day. And he said, all major crises that we face now, climate change, health pandemics, nuclear wars, racism, are international in nature, the response to which cannot be national, and in advocating the erosion of borders to ensure coordinated global response to threats, while at the same time preserving local justice. Thank you. And now I return the program.
Thank you, Dr. Vandari. I think you introduced me. You are not audible, but I hope everybody can hear me. Dr. Bista, can you give me a thumbs up to make sure I'm making sense? I'm being heard. Okay. All right. Good evening, stars. I know many of you have been watching from different time zones of this planet. But for me, it's always evening because when I see the stars are out, it's evening, right? Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Vandari, for a generous introduction. Professor Chomsky, President Wilson, Secretary General Mittal, Secretary General Pandey, President Pasquarella, President Stever, President Boggs, President Glasper, President LeBlanc, Chairman Tan Sri Jo, Professor Juru, Vice Chancellor Sarma, Vice Chancellor Kumar, respected advisors of the Star Scholars Network, respected Professor Vista, Professor Glass, Professor Valu, Dr. Wright, and the STAR leadership team, STAR country directors, my fellow STAR scholars, members of the global press, and world leaders and dignitaries joining us from around the world, a very welcome to you. Ladies and gentlemen, as an international student who navigated education systems in India, Europe, and the United States, I have come across the forces that tend to make this world a better place every single day. However, I have also realized that the world is not ideal and that there are forces that do just the opposite. George Floyd's death in Minneapolis in the United States in May earlier this year was one such reminder. It was a crucial reckoning of race and social justice in the United States, but was also a moment for the world to take stock of the inhumane actions of human beings everywhere. When George Floyd breathed his last breath, Dr. Wilson of Morgan State University wrote the following statement. His cries of "Mama, I can't breathe," fell empty on the ears of the callous and cold-hearted officer. I have not been able to sleep restfully since witnessing this tragedy. Unquote. A statement that Professor Chomsky called powerful and eloquent. We are indeed so fortunate to have inspiring leaders like Dr. Wilson and Professor Chomsky with us today. As educators, when we help our students distinguish between patriotism and tribalism, we are helping to shape a humane world. We are teaching them to speak up for social justice, run for social justice, kneel for social justice, jump for social justice. By the way, that was my first editorial of the journal I started in 2017. So our duty as educators is more important today than ever before. We need to identify destructive forces and push them back for ourselves and for our students. But where do these forces lie? One actually does not need to look far. These forces are within each of us. It is indeed time for soul searching and stock taking. Why I'm emphasizing social justice today? We are at a unique juncture of history where the world is facing the largest health crisis of the 21st century. Artificial intelligence is driving much of the world. Higher education has gone remote overnight, and where human beings are increasingly connected only by technology. At the same time, as we are witnessing at this very wonderful conference, an award event, technology is also an enabler and equalizer. Universities are under enormous pressure to remain financially stable while continuing to support their students' social, emotional, and mental health. And through all of this, universities must demonstrate their value to society. At this moment of global upheaval, where health and safety issues have collided with nationalism and the turning inward of societies, what is the role of institutions of higher learning? Our role as educators is not only to increase knowledge, but also to help shape the hearts and minds of our students, educating them to be the humane citizens of the world, but also teaching them resilience. This point in time forces us to ask ourselves, what is our moral compass? What are our values as educators? How do we practice ethical standards as educators and researchers? How do we remain cognizant about what is included, who is included, and who is left out due to historically unjust systems? It is we, the educators, who will educate and shape the future Mandela, Gandhi, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and dare I say, the future David Wilson and Noam Chomsky. I am pleased to share within the Star Scholars Network, these are critical issues that we are thinking about each day. The network is the confluence of positive forces that shape a humane world. We are not neutral. Rather, we are intentional in creating equal opportunities, advocating for justice, and creating open dialogues that advance our vision of shaping a humane world through global social mobility. We are interested in deepening our understanding across different areas because we know that solutions to complex problems cannot be found in academic silos. The vision has translated into this amazing organization consisting of scientists, scholars, researchers, practitioners, leaders who have been advancing this mission in impressive ways across the globe. STAR scholars do not just seek academic accolades. They seek to bring about positive change, to make this world a better place while pursuing their own careers. Today, the STAR Scholars Network has over 17,000 members, as Dr. Bista just mentioned, across over 119 countries. It has launched over a dozen academic journals, and I feel incredibly privileged and honored to lead this distinguished global forum as president. Thank you for your trust. When I received a Fulbright scholarship a decade ago, I had one goal in mind: to empower the university that I was instrumental in establishing in my hometown of Surkhet in Nepal. When I was in the United States, I saw that my mentors had been collaborating across the globe in scholarly endeavors. I was inspired to create frameworks and opportunities that bring us together and create synergy. Since then, I have had the opportunity to coordinate many international events in the United States and abroad, and more recently have been advocating for community colleges and diaspora connections, particularly in the developing world. We're so fortunate to have Noam Chomsky with us this evening, celebrating his 92nd birthday. He reminds us that our responsibility to make the arc of the moral universe visible in a way that is not clouded by conspiracy theories, ego, and self-interest. Professor Chomsky has always challenged us to think big. And it was in this spirit that he agreed to establish the Global Connections Awards in his name within STAR Scholars Network. Professor Chomsky points out that our current crisis go beyond the pandemic, serious issues that need our immediate attention. But I don't want to give away anything, as we will have a chance to hear directly from him later this evening, when we will also have an opportunity to congratulate the winners of the Noam Chomsky Global Connections Awards, which will be announced later this evening by the award committee chair, Dr. Anthony Ogden. To the winners, I offer my congratulations. The award ceremony always reminds me of a beautiful evening from my previous life during the centennial annual meeting of the Association of American Colleges and Universities. It was a beautiful evening in Washington, D.C. AACU President Carol Greery Snyder was stepping down. Dr. Lynn Pasquarella was the incoming president. I was a recipient of K. Patricia Cross Future Leaders Award and was attending the award dinner with my wife. President Pasquarella was speaking and everyone was enjoying their food and drinks. So was I. To my shock and surprise, she called upon me to say a few words as an award winner. I rose up. My wife yanked me back, but I pushed on and took the podium. I don't remember what I said. What I remember is that the theme of the conference was inclusive excellence. The audience was generous, and they did give me a round of applause. But most of them probably figured that I was a bit tipsy. I am sorry, Madam President, as a graduate student living on a tight budget then, my hands had gravitated to the fine drinks. I probably embarrassed you on that day a little bit, and I'm going to embarrass you today as well. But I'm sober today. Today's award winners remind me of why the birth of some individuals is so critically important, because they shape a legacy that impacts all of humanity. Yes, today is a very, very special day. It is Dr. Lynn Pasquarella's birthday. Happy birthday, Madam President. Thank you for sharing this evening with us. As we all know, we are celebrating Professor Chomsky's birthday as well. What a powerful day. What a powerful evening. In fact, I have received hundreds of stories from around the globe from scholars who wanted me to convey to you, Professor Chomsky, and to you, President Pasquarella, how they are inspired by you, and thousands of others wishing you happy birthday across our social media. Amazing. As I revel in the moment, I must acknowledge, we will also hear from several thought leaders today. Higher education does not operate in a vacuum. We have problem. Are we at an inflection point? As Professor Sutin, one of our star advisors, asks, what is the immune system for higher education? How can the star scholars help? You will hear this and more from our speakers today. I would like to thank Nepal Open University for hosting the 2020 STAR Conference. I would like to thank our sponsors. Please stay well, stay connected. You are the stars. Keep shining bright. Thank you.
Dr. Pasquarella and Professor Chomsky. With that, I'm going to invite Dr. Wilson to share his remarks.
Thank you very much, and good evening, good morning to everyone who is joining us. I have basically been following the chat here, and I know that it is morning in some places around the world and evening in other places. And so on behalf of Morgan State University, on behalf of the thousands of our alumni spread around the globe, it is really an honor for me, to our dignitaries that have joined us, to our star scholars that have joined us, to welcome all of you to this gathering where the theme that you have gathered around is extremely propitious, shaping a humane world, global higher education perspectives. Is that if there was ever a time for scholars around the world to gather, to cogitate on how we can shape a more humane world, that time is now. And so I want to certainly congratulate Dr. Ghali for being president of the Star Scholars. What perhaps some of you might not know is that Dr. Ghali is also president of the Faculty Senate at Morgan State University, and he is a standing member of the president's cabinet. And so I really benefit significantly from his perspectives that are oftentimes rooted in globalism as we make critical decisions at the university, including decisions that we have made over the last 8 or 9 months while we're in this pandemic. I certainly want to take this opportunity as well to wish Dr. Chomsky a happy 92nd birthday. I have just been so enamored of your work throughout my career and really appreciate all that you have done to advance cognitive science and certainly to shape my perspectives on how to see the world and how to be a more caring leader. And so thank you also for joining this network this evening, and I look forward to your remarks. I want to also offer my congratulations to the Nepal Open University on successfully hosting the 2020 STAR Conference, though, of course, we all are gathered virtually, but Morgan has a great relationship with Nepal. Indeed, we signed a MOU a couple of years ago with Midwestern University there. And then just last year, the Ambassador Kirky, actually held a reception in Washington, D.C. to celebrate the great relationship that Morgan has established with Nepal. And we look forward to growing that relationship as we move forward. Dr. Ghali, as he was making comments about his attending the reception at AAC&U with Dr. Pasquarelli, indicated that he had actually been there to receive the K. Patricia Cross Award. Patricia Cross, was my major professor at Harvard. She was the national expert on community colleges. He is also, Dr. Ghali, an expert on community colleges. And we really appreciate the kind of scholarship that he is bringing to this field. And he is basically trying to connect that scholarship to diaspora communities in developing countries. And we are pleased to learn of his research that is already making a positive impact on these developing societies. Indeed, I just became aware that he's a strong advocate for a Dalit university in Nepal. And this was an institution that has been envisaged to serve the historically oppressed community of the Dalits. And so I just want you to know this evening, I want to be cognizant of the time, that I am highly encouraged by the STAR's mission of serving as advocates for social mobility for a more just and more humane world. At Morgan, we are unabashedly clear when we hold high our motto of growing the future, leading the world. We say to our students at Morgan, and Dr. Ghali and Dr. Vista, Dr. Prime, and others are partners in this, that when you come to Morgan, you are coming to get a world-class education. You're coming to understand the world. You're coming to make sure that what you get from this institution is not just that which is going to enable you to compete with students and understand students across town or in the next state, but you need to understand the world, and you need to understand it in a way where you are going to exercise critical judgment and critical thinking. And so we pride ourselves on being deeply rooted in internationalism and globalization. Indeed, we are 70% Black, but we are one of the most diverse universities you will find. The faculty at Morgan is 35% international, about 25% white, about 40% Black, and they come from all corners of the world. And as such, are bringing rich perspectives to what they do at the institution, informing research perspectives. And Morgan also is looking to develop a physical presence in certain parts of the world. Indeed, starting in the fall of 2021, we will have a physical presence in Africa. We will have a Morgan State Africa campus, and we will be offering 3 degrees in Ghana as the beginning of that. And we have already developed a great relationship with the TET Fund in Nigeria, where we are bringing to the campus starting this year up to 50 public lecturers in public universities in Nigeria who want to get their PhDs and then return to those institutions on the faculty. And we have agreed to basically educate about 300 Nigerian lecturers over the next 5 to 7 years in this space as well. And so what I just want to say to you this evening is congratulations to the winners that will be announced later. And congratulations to Dr. Ghali for leading this particular Star Scholars Network. And congratulations to all of you for raising your hand and saying it is time for all of us to work together for a more just and more humane world and more humane society. On behalf of Morgan State University, congratulations.
Partnerships, as you just described, about your institution's expansion and partnerships in Africa, and also reminding us of the important diversity of US higher education and the importance of community colleges. And also we got to learn much more about Dr. Gowley's contributions, both to your institution as well as the field. So thank you so much for that. In this next portion of the program, we will start by hearing from three Nepali leaders. Mr. Hari Bhandari is a delegate to the Maryland General Assembly and also serves as the Vice President of Political Affairs with Star Scholars. Mr. Pashupati Pandey is Secretary of the Non-Resident Nepalese Association, USA. And then we will have Ambassador Arjun Karki, who's Ambassador from 5 experts who also advise and assist the STAR Scholars Network. First, we will have Dr. Stuart Sutton, who most recently served as clinical professor at Pittsburgh. He will be followed by Dr. Eugene Hammond, professor of writing and rhetoric at Stony Brook University. Then we'll have Dr. Edward Vallow, Superintendent President Emeritus of Hartnell Community College in California. He'll be followed by Dr. Dala Dierdorf, who's the Executive Director of the Association of International Educators. And then the last, but certainly not the least in this group, will be Dr. Rosalind Raby, Director of the California Colleges of International Education. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Bhandari.
Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Good evening, scholars. My name is Hari Bhandari, and I'm a member of the House of Delegates in Maryland. I would like to take this time to congratulate all of tonight's award winners and all of the nominees. As a former educator in Kathmandu, a current educator in the great state of Maryland, and the first Nepalese American to hold a statewide office in the United States, I know a thing or two about the importance of education, academic mobility, and the social mobility. The road we are walking can be very lonely, but rewarding at the end. The award winners tonight are the best of the best, shining beacons of the STAR Scholars Network, whose work is essential to advancing social mobility across the world. We need to focus on transnational research now more than ever, as our world becomes increasingly more connected. I'm thrilled to see STAR bringing it to the forefront, as well as giving us the opportunity to hear from the inimitable Professor Noam Chomsky. Yes, inimitable, impossible to copy, so unique. Professor Chomsky and Dr. Lin, happy birthday. Thank you to all of you for all that you do, particularly Dr. Uttam Gowley, his team, all members, and know that your work is bettering our global community. I would like to thank Dr. Gowley for so many innovative ideas, particularly germinating the ideas of Brain Gain Center through his PhD research, which is recognized by the Nepal's government. Congratulations again to all of tonight's award winners and nominees, and I look forward to seeing you all in 2021. Unfortunately, this pandemic is still all over the map. Please stay safe by wearing masks and washing hands. Thank you.
Dr. Bhandari, you're not audible. I believe you're calling Mr. Pandey next.
Good evening and namaste. Professor Chomsky, distinguished guests, and the STAR scholars. I would like to congratulate all the nominees and the STAR Scholar Award winners. I'm pleased to bring greetings to you on behalf of the Non-Resident Nepalese Association, USA, and Mr. President. We are proud to learn that the 2020 STAR Conference was successfully hosted by the Nepal Open University. We are happy to see that the scholars and the researchers from around the world joined the conference and discussed issues that matter for Nepal. As a General Secretary of the Non-Resident Nepali Association, I'm very proud of Dr. Gauli and STAR scholars whose research has made a positive influence on Nepal's development. Dr. Gauli's idea of diaspora, connection, community college, brain gain are important for all developing countries. NRNA NCC USA is looking forward to working with the STAR in the future. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of your conference. Thank you.
Namaste, good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, our special guest, Professor Chomsky, member of STAR Scholar Networks, and friends. It is my great pleasure to be joining you all at this 2020 STAR Conference closing and award ceremony. On behalf of Government of Nepal and the Embassy of Nepal in Washington, D.C., I would like to thank the STAR Scholars Network for not just organizing this event, but also providing Nepal the opportunity to host it as well. Events such as this, specifically focusing on today's theme, that is global perspective on higher education, are of high importance, especially as the global community is being challenged to rethink a number of issues on different policy fronts, including higher education. This need to rethink has specifically challenged developing nations like Nepal to reconsider what constitutes a truly human and all-rounded education. It has also challenged all of us to deliberate on the avenue to effectively reap the benefit of an all-rounded education that would push the economic development of our respective countries. I know that the STAR Scholars Network has been at the forefront of researching and finding solutions to these challenges. The Brain Gain Center that was introduced recently in Nepal, for instance, is one inspired by the research done by scholars focusing on higher education, including those like our friend Dr. Uttam Gauli within this STAR network. Therefore, my sincere hope is that researchers today continue to study this issue to find innovative solutions to the challenges that persist in higher education, not just in the aftermath of the consequences produced by the pandemic, but also for problems we have had before the pandemic started. Once again, I thank you all for having me here today and for your commitment to improving education and access to it across the world. Thank you very much. Namaste and good evening.
We have problem, Dr. Bandari's audio. I think the next is Professor Sutin, STAR advisor.
Thank you, Tom. First, I want to pay tribute to you and Dr. Bishta and all of the leaders associated with the STAR network. Creating something from nothing is a vast undertaking. And look how far you've all come in such a short space of time, with how much effect and what demonstrations of goodwill across national boundaries. Good for all of you. That's a job very well done. Uttam, I'd like to expand upon the concerns that you have. I share them, and I believe most of us do, if not all of us do, who are part of this conversation tonight. What are some, to be more precise, what are some of these challenges we face? We're living in an era, unfortunately, of hypernationalism, with the most extreme forms of negative manifestations, intense anti-intellectualism, blatant bigotry. We have destabilizations in the short term caused by a pandemic, in the longer term, extraordinary concerns for the well-being of our climate, and concerns, proper concerns about global health warming. This comes at a time when the very value propositions of higher education are held with suspect by too many, with contempt by still more perhaps. Science and the humanities are increasingly devalued. Reflective thinking is underemphasized. We face intense pushback when we attempt to expand the frontiers of knowledge, and somehow creating a more enlightened society seems to itself cause intense counter reactions among some leaders, some in the political sector and some outside of it. So make no mistake about it, these are enormous challenges, and it causes us correctly as educational leaders, as scholars, and as human beings to reflect upon what is our personal mission? What are our institutional missions? How much further can we press upon our limited resources to achieve so much more, so we fight back the closing of the curtain on an enlightened population, and these hands of goodwill that cross national frontiers so willingly, so joyfully, to seek a common good can be built upon. And so I commend you all for the wonderful work that the STAR Network is performing. And here's to better days in the future as a consequence of your direct and serious efforts. Thank you.
Professor Hammond.
Thank you, Uttam. Both at the board meeting we had a few months ago and at this conference, I am so impressed by all the individuals that I have heard from, that I feel really that I don't have very much to say. I gave a talk a couple of days ago at one of the panels and said everything is on my mind. And actually, Dr. Sutton has said very eloquently a lot of what is on my mind right now. I would like to emphasize, though, the confidence that I have in this group and other groups like it. Even when the world's leaders are being stupid, the people on the ground are doing very good things, and such impressive things. And they don't need tremendous resources to do that. It would be better if they had more resources. But it's very encouraging to see what people do with opportunities that they and we do have. So I would just like to encourage everybody to continue with this kind of work. Keep meeting people, as many as you can, from other countries to get new perspectives on things, and realize that we have a lot in common, and we will build a much better future. Thank you.
Next is Professor Valu. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
First, I want to begin by thanking Dr. Golim and Dr. Bishna for their outstanding leadership and vision. Leadership and vision are important factors in our society today. But having a vision is not worth very much if you do not have the leadership to implement that vision. I think the Star Scholars Network has demonstrated in no uncertain terms that they have the ability to exercise a vision. Dr. Goldie came to me and asked me to chair the 2020 STAR conference. I was amazed, primarily because I was wondering why me. You know, Dr. Goldie has an interesting way of convincing people that it is you. I need you, my brother. So let's get busy. And you cannot turn someone who's making that kind of request down. And so I took that challenge on. But the success of that challenge does not lie in the chairman of the conference. It actually lies in the conference committee members. And I want to, at this time, publicly acknowledge all of the outstanding panelists, the outstanding planners who made the 2020 Scholar Star Network conference in Kathmandu, Nepal, a success. We had over 5,000 participants in that conference over the first 2.5 days. Remarkable for our very first time. I received word from the various panelists as well as some of the moderators. There was great confidence and great feelings of involvement by those people who participated. This celebration that we have today is nothing more than a celebration. It's nothing more than a celebration for the time that we're in. But it's also something else. It's a signal for us to all get busy. Chomsky reminds us, particularly those of you who are in your 60s and your 70s, and soon to be your 50s and later your 80s, that the road ahead of us is long and far. Age, chronologically, is not the number. It's the contributions that you make along the way. It is the emulation of a model in the form of Dr. Chomsky. Those individuals who have been recognized for these awards, make no mistake about it. You have an awesome responsibility as a change agent to do good, to make a difference, not sit on your laurels and your certificate hung on your wall as an affirmation that you achieved something. Because in reality, you've only achieved an opportunity to take the next step to make a difference in the lives of those around you and those who are way and far beyond you in terms of borders. And until you take on that change agent, as a change agent, don't be so quick to hang your certificate on your wall. Do something. Make something happen. Make a difference. That is what Dr. Goldie has done. That is what Dr. Bista has done. And certainly it is what all of us must do. I want to welcome the international and national viewers today to let them know that this event was not about us individually on this screen, but it was all about you as a collective to embrace the idea that together we can make a difference. Dr. Chomsky, I want to say in closing, thank you for being such an outstanding role model. Thank you for giving us guidance and direction in the ways that we have to go. I want to say to those who occupy positions of authority and leadership, get up, make a difference, do something. I want to say to those young aspiring scholars that I had a chance to meet throughout the conference, this is your day. You will inherit the mantle. You have to be better than those whom you see on this screen. You have to do more because, as Dr. Sitton said, the challenges before us are great, but never forget, we've had challenges before. It was someone who said, I think it was Dewey, and I'll quote, "If we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob our children of tomorrow." He said that 100 years ago. We are in the throes of teaching. Let us all make sure that the leadership and the direction that's necessary for the 21st century and beyond is ours to carry and ours to unfold and ours to show that together we can make a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. My name is Darla Deerdorf, and I'm very honored and pleased to be here with you today. First, let me wish Professor Chomsky a very happy birthday. It's such a pleasure to reconnect with you again after having met with you several years ago when you were in Cambridge with our mutual friend and colleague, Bruno Della Chiesa. And I want to wish you all the very, very best in the year ahead. I also wish to congratulate President Uttam Ghali and the amazing leadership team of the Star Scholars Network on the completion of a successful conference, and especially for the significant work being accomplished by this network, in particular marshaling global higher education perspectives to inform the scholarship on global social mobility. And a special congratulations to those who had the vision in creating and naming this Global Connections Award for Professor Chomsky, who is indeed such an inspiration to all of us. Certainly, the Star Scholars Network exemplifies the very essence of this award, as illustrated here today, in bringing together so many scholars from around the world. Professor Chomsky, you once said that we have two choices. We can be pessimistic, give up, and help ensure the worst will happen, or we can be optimistic, grasp at the opportunities that surely exist, and maybe help make the world a better place. And you concluded by saying it's really not much of a choice. And in thinking about shaping a humane world, the choice is indeed very clear. And I think all of us gathered here today embrace this challenge that you've laid before us. In helping to make the world a better place, I'm heartened by the work of those involved in the Star Scholars Network, and also by those involved in the World Council on Intercultural and Global Competence, and is supported as a founding affiliate through the STARS Network. The World Council represents scholars and practitioners from all over the world who are working to bridge divides and to understand more deeply what is necessary for us to learn to live together as humans sharing this planet. Never have there been more divides that confront us as humans. And as I wrote a recent essay in the Journal of International Students, it's time we relearn how to live together. This is essential in shaping a more humane world. And in relearning how to live together, it's time we focus on what it means to be a good neighbor to each other. And dare I say, even to love each other. Far beyond a naive sentiment, loving one's neighbor is hard work, and sometimes means even dangerous work, when such love means standing up for what's right, sacrificing for others' good, and even risking one's life, as in the case of frontline healthcare workers today. As Martin Luther King Jr. observed, the true neighbor will risk position, prestige, and life for the welfare of others. So I want to leave all of us with a question and one final quote. The question is this: how might the world be different if humans actually practiced loving their neighbors and enemies and putting others' needs as equal to their own? In closing, we need to remember that, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, we must learn to live together as brothers, as family, or perish together as fools. Let us continue to reflect on what matters most, what bonds us all together, and what it means to love our neighbors locally and globally. Thank you.
Professor Rabi, are you here? Thank you, Professor Deardorff.
Dr. Rosalind Raby was here in the room.
Yeah, it looks like I saw her a minute ago.
Shall we proceed with the next speaker then?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Hello to all our distinguished speakers. I hope that I'm audible to all of you. Hello once again from India. I'm Dr. Moushami Mukherjee, a fellow of the Star Scholars Network and the India Country Director. I will introduce to you the next set of our distinguished speakers, who are all heads of important professional associations in charge of overseeing leadership and operations of many higher educational institutions within the United States and around the world. I would like to introduce them, but before introducing them, I would also like to share a quote from Noam Chomsky, where he said, "If you assume that there is no hope, you guarantee that there will be no hope. If you assume that there is an instinct for freedom, that there are opportunities to change things, then there is a possibility that you can contribute to making a better world." As we all know, today we are celebrating Noam Chomsky's 92nd birthday at this closing ceremony of the STAR 2020 conference. We are also celebrating, as Dr. Gawley mentioned in the beginning, Lynn Pascarella's birthday today. So our next speaker is actually Lynn Pascarella, who serves as the president of the Association of American Colleges and Universities since July 2016. She's a philosopher whose career has combined teaching and scholarship with local and global engagement. She's continuously demonstrated a deep and abiding commitment to ensuring that all students have access to excellence in liberal education, regardless of their socioeconomic background. So I would like to really welcome Lynn Pascarella now to deliver her address. I think there is an issue with the audio. We are not able to hear her.
Can't hear. Yeah, audio didn't come through. Let's try one more time. I can't hear, Madam President.
Should I introduce the next speaker and wait till President
Yeah, we'll come back to
Pascarella?
you, Madam President, one more time.
Yes, we'll come back to President Pascarella, and let's move on to our next speaker. I hope that I think I saw him, he's in the meeting room. George Boggs, he's president of and CEO emeritus of American Association of Community Colleges and superintendent president emeritus of Paloma College in San Marcos, California. He continues to be an active consultant, teacher, author, and speaker. Over his career, Dr. Boggs has served on many boards, commissions, and committees, including those of the American Council on Education, Educational Testing Service, National Center for Post-Secondary Research, the National Center for Community College Student Engagement, and the National Science Foundation. Dr. Boggs, over to you. I hope that you can deliver your address now.
Well, thank you very much. And colleagues, it's great to be with you. So I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. Well, I would like to say that there's no better way for us to shape a humane world than through the education of our people. Education promotes understanding and appreciation of cultural, racial, religious, and national differences. It opens people's eyes to the beauty of life and appreciation of the arts and performance. It enables science literacy and appreciation of how science and technology transform our world. Education improves the quality of life for people and increases both health and economic well-being. Many countries have come to understand the need to open the doors of post-secondary or tertiary education beyond the relatively limited enrollments possible in elite and selective universities. One effective model to study is the American Community College model, now 120 years old. There are now 1,050 community colleges in the United States, enrolling about 41% of American college students. Community colleges are considered part of higher education in the United States, rather than being part of a separate further education system that is found in some other countries. Since they are part of higher education, students have the option either of enrolling in a career technical education program that certifies them for employment, or they can continue their education toward a baccalaureate or advanced degree by transferring credits to a university. Several other countries have adopted the US community college model, including Canada, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. The Knowledge Convention of the Non-Resident Nepali Association held in September also addressed the potential for community colleges in Nepal. When considering expansion of tertiary education, countries should be guided by important values. First is that these institutions should be accessible, both geographically, and they should be non-selective in their admissions. Second, they should be affordable. That means that tuition costs for students should be low. In the United States, we do this by having our institutions, for the most part, be publicly supported. The institution should be accountable. There are quality assurance mechanisms throughout the world, and in most countries, there are government quality assurance mechanisms. In the United States, our quality assurance is non-government regional accreditation. It's the same accreditors that accredit our major universities that also accredit community colleges. These institutions should also have a focus on student success, providing support to assist students who are at risk academically or financially. The institution should be responsive to the needs of communities. For example, in the United States and the states near the Gulf of Mexico, the colleges have petrochemical technician training programs because the oil industry is very important in that part of our country. There are agriculture programs in the Midwest and California, automotive tech programs in Michigan and Kentucky. Well, these are just some examples of how community colleges can respond to the economic needs of communities by providing the courses and programs needed to prepare students for the workforce. The colleges also have the ability to transform an economy. And here's another example from the United States. Two of our states, North Carolina and South Carolina, had their economic bases threatened when they lost the textile manufacturing industry and furniture manufacturing industry to other countries. And the tobacco growing industry took a downturn because of the health effects of tobacco usage. But leaders in those states transformed their economies to high-tech economies using community colleges to prepare the workforce. Well, I'd like to conclude by thanking you for the opportunity to speak with you and ask that you consider the expansion of tertiary education. And thank you all for what you are doing to shape a more humane world. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Boggs, for your inspiring talk and sharing your experience, and also highlighting the role of leadership in shaping a better world, and especially during these troubled times. Thanks a lot. Our next speaker in this particular series is Dr. Lynn Pascarella. I think she's already back, and I already introduced her before. Shall we now listen to Dr. Pascarella?
Can you hear me this time?
Yes, absolutely, ma'am. We can hear you clearly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mukherjee. And I wanted to acknowledge the great work that Dr. Ghali has done. When we named him a Cross Scholar at the AAC&U meeting, it was clear then, as it is now, that he has and will continue to shape higher education in profound and lasting ways. And so it is such a pleasure to be here to acknowledge the extraordinary work of the Star Scholars Network and to celebrate the remarkable life and legacy of Professor Noam Chomsky. And thanks to all of you who have sent along kind birthday wishes. The mission of the Association of American Colleges and Universities is to advance the vitality and public standing of liberal education by making quality and equity the foundations for excellence in undergraduate education in service to democracy. And, following up on Dr. Sutton's comments, in this post-truth era where rational inquiry built on evidence has all but been abandoned, the work seems more urgent than ever. During these days of anti-intellectualism, polarization, and partisanship, we must collectively reaffirm the role that a liberal education plays in discerning the truth, the ways in which it serves as a catalyst for interrogating the sources of narratives, including history, evidence, and facts, the ways in which a liberal education promotes an understanding that the world is a collection of interdependent yet inequitable systems, the ways that it expands knowledge of human interactions, privilege, and stratification, and the ways in which higher education fosters equity and justice locally and globally. If nothing else, the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us that a 21st century liberal education requires preparing students to be informed and responsible global citizens in a world that is changing economically, politically, and culturally at a rapid pace. Despite the challenges that the Academy has faced over the past several months, we are provided with an enormous opportunity to embrace a renewed and reinvigorated commitment to liberal education and its capacity to cultivate dispositions that enable productive dialogue and democratic debate, including intercultural respect, openness to change, and a collaborative model of problem solving that demonstrates the value of expertise applied in service to the community. If higher education is to emerge strengthened by the ongoing crisis touched off by the COVID-19 pandemic, we must intentionally prioritize equity, quality, and inclusion in any of the possible futures ahead of us, while foregrounding the need to develop a global perspective that situates civic engagement and community involvement at its core. Our ability to fulfill the promises that we've made to our students and to fulfill the broader democratic purposes of higher education will depend on whether we hold fast to these shared values. I look forward to nothing more than to working together in the days ahead to achieve our common objectives. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pascarella, and happy birthday to you once again from all of us. I hope that you already had a really good day, and thank you for your inspiring talk in the middle of all these difficult times that we are all facing globally. And I'm sure with inspiration from all of you, great leaders like you, we are going to move towards a better future. And let me now introduce to our next speaker, who is also in this meeting room. I can see him. Dr. Rufus Glasper he's the president and CEO of the League for Innovation in the Community College, an international non-profit organization with a mission to cultivate innovation in the community college environment in a continuing effort to advance community college field and make a positive difference for students and communities. Dr. Glasper serves as an advisory board member for the Center for Community College Student Engagement, University of Texas at Austin, Community College Research Center at Teachers College, Columbia University, and the Bell Center for Community College Leadership and Research at North Carolina State University. Dr. Glasper also serves on the board of directors for the Education Design Lab and the Consortium for Mathematics and its Applications. We are really glad to have you here, Dr. Glasper. Over to you to share your experience of leadership to enrich all of us. Dr. Glasper.
Thank you very much. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I just want to build on the comments of Dr. Boggs. You know, in July of 2020, an article by the Community College Review stated that community colleges are more important than ever. And community colleges enroll nearly half of all college students in the US. And this is an opportunity for students to have education where they otherwise would not be able to access. As we think about community colleges in the US and we think about their initial role, I would say that it's still evolving. It's still considered pretty much as quote unquote almost a second class kind of education. Maybe you weren't able to go to the four-year institution. But the fact that we have open access policies, that we make it easier to enroll those students who had issues with some of their academic records, that they're lower tuition and lower cost, and it's more flexible in terms of curriculum, in terms of development and so forth, that I think those particular traits are now bearing fruits as we are involved in this pandemic as we move forward. And in many cases, the economic impact and studies of attending a community college, the studies show that students accrue an economic benefit whether or not they actually complete a community college two-year degree or whether or not they complete or transfer to the university in general. One of the things that we're focusing on right now is the notion of STEM, undergraduate STEM. And to compete in the global workforce and the economic health of the United States in the area of STEM, community colleges are required now, if we are to meet our goals in the global economy of global health, we are required to provide at least 35% of the capacity relative to STEM as it's focused in this particular world. And when you look at the areas that community colleges are actually very good at, I think we can do a good job at it if we think about the notion that STEM education is a focus and that it is part of our responsibility. The one area that I have seen that has continued to operate during the pandemic has been the area of construction. We're looking at how we can contribute more to advanced manufacturing, healthcare, bioscience, technology. For every PhD and MD, they need at least 10 technicians. And that's our role. As long as we stay mission-centric, I think we can continue to provide that support to our economy here in the US and have that model for replication elsewhere. We look at the notion of energy, where an individual coming out of high school may decide that they want to be an engineering, an energy pole climber. They're responsible for connections of wires. But we've developed programs where they can enter into the workforce right out of high school and within 8 steps come in and out of the workplace and transfer to a four-year institution in the area of engineering. Let's revert now to what has happened during the role that we have expanded to during the pandemic. It builds upon the 2008 recession and it looks at the 2020 pandemic. We're confronted with some of our greatest challenges: stagnant family outcomes, disparities in income and health, and politics and polarization within the US. COVID-19 has impacted workers that find or are looking for the notion of what's available to me to feed my family, what's available for me to transition from having a 4-year degree or more to getting back into the workplace and continuing to move forward. The whole notion of what is digital dexterity now, what kind of training is available in terms of reskilling and in terms of retraining. Millions of individuals need jobs, and they need jobs right now. In-demand skills are challenging those to move faster, quicker, think faster, and quite frankly, traditional academic programs and traditional academic processes are not meeting the needs of our students now or our broader community. There's a focus now in terms of our colleges to move towards what we are describing as micro-credentials. And the micro-credentials, in some cases, I would say fly in the face of traditionary programming through our accrediting agencies. And there are programs that move from possibly 16, 18 weeks to 9 days. And the question we need to ask ourselves, can education move at the speed of industry? Can we maintain the integrity of what we have described as guided pathways to a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree? Or can we put people, individuals back to work and maintain these micro-credentials or micro pathways? The League for Innovation is currently working with 6 institutions around the country. And through these institutions, we expect to replicate and scale the work that we're involved in. And I'll mention them very quickly. We're talking about Seattle, we're talking about Austin and Texas, Seattle and Washington, the CUNY system in New York, Ivy Tech system in Indiana, Pima Community College here in the state of Arizona. We're also talking about Prince George's College in Maryland. And we're trying to find those colleges who can work with their faculty, who can work in building these particular projects, because in the SUNY system in New York, it has the micro-credentials and micro-pathways are offered within existing degree programs with micro-credentials and can motivate current students to persist. That's one of the things that we want to ensure that students have in front of them. The micro-credentials give students tangible evidence of accomplishment, and if accomplished by a digital badge, this can be something that can be publicly posted and shared. And lastly, micro-credentials can be used to motivate students and articulate the value of the various content areas and competencies at a given general education program. Finally, it can increase your wages at a time when you need them the most, and it can build a credential so that you can sustain your family as you move forward. And it's a model for the future. I believe that this pandemic is allowing us to think differently, to think about the new normal. And in the end, I think the conversations can show that the community college will be the cornerstone of American higher education as we move forward. And I thank you for this opportunity, and I wish you well, and thank you very much for your inspiration with this conference.
Thank you, Dr. Glasper, for highlighting the challenges for institutional leaders and particularly for higher education in the middle of the pandemic, but at the same time, also highlighting the way forward, showing us the way forward through your speech. Thank you very much. We would now move on to our next speaker in this session. I think he's already in the meeting room. Henry Stever, he's there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Dr. Henry Stever is the president and CEO of the Association of Governing Boards of Universities and Colleges. He brings to the Association of Governing Boards a deep understanding of the importance of strategic governance and a wealth of experience building member-focused organizations. As the Association of Governing Boards President and CEO, he oversees leadership and operations of the organization, serving over 1,300 boards representing over 40,000 individual trustees across more than 2,000 member institutions around the world. So as all of you can imagine, he brings a wealth of experience with him. Over to you, Dr. Stever.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mukherjee. I assume you can hear me okay?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. Before I move on, I want to just applaud your comments, Rufus, because 2 of my 5 kids are have completed community college as they're almost finished with their undergraduate work, and I personally have seen the value of community college and the flexibility that it can provide to our students to provide a meaningful pathway. So thank you so much for your passion and hard work. So as Dr. Mukherjee said, my name is Henry Stever, and I'm the president of AGB, the Association of Governing Boards of Universities and Colleges. I'm pleased to join you from Washington, D.C. Please don't throw any virtual darts at me from joining you from Washington, D.C. AGB's mission is really focused on empowering board members to serve as strategic partners with presidents and executive teams to focus on student success and long-term institutional vitality. And it's a pleasure for me to join you and join the STARS network here and participate in this conference with a theme so relevant today of shaping a humane world. Further, thank you so much for all of your contributions, and many thanks to Dr. Uttam Ghali for organizing this great conference. I've had the pleasure of meeting Uttam many a time here in the Washington, D.C. area, and thank you, Uttam, for your hard work to pull this all together. It's no easy feat in addition to your day job. So I joined AGB, as Dr. Mukherjee said, with over 40,000 board members across 2,000 institutions, because I'm passionate about higher education. And specifically, my passion for higher education is because it develops and curates talent, innovation, and research that fuels our societies, communities, and economies. As the old saying goes, it takes a village, and certainly higher education is a global village that's required to fuel our societies, economies, and communities. So the theme of this conference, Shaping a Humane World, is close to my heart. And when I spoke with Dr. Ghali last week, I suggested the following 3 comments, and he said, perfect, go for it. So my 3 comments are as follows. 1 is around shared governance. Number 2 is around strategic transformation. And number 3 is around justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And thank you to Dr. Lynn Pasquarella for mentioning that as well, and some of the other presenters as well. So from a shared governance perspective, I believe it is absolutely critical to the future of all institutions. And I encourage all board members and boards and presidents to leverage shared governance to shape the futures of their institutions. Without it, it's going to go back into my 3rd bullet around inclusivity. Without shared governance, we don't have inclusivity. So number 2, strategic transformation. You all know so much around what's happened in the last 6 or 8 months due to the pandemic. And unfortunately, at least here in the United States and around the world, the business model of higher education is broken and really needs some retooling. And so that's why the importance of shared governance, working in collaboration with boards and presidents, is absolutely critical to empower institutions to sustain their operations, deliver incredibly high-valued education or high-quality education and unique value for all of their students, communities, and stakeholders. And my 3rd point is around justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the values of JDE&I are AGB's #1 strategic priority. And I'm urging all of our board members, all of our faculty members, presidents, and leadership teams that are members with AGB to develop board policies and institutional strategies that manifest throughout campus and across all programs. Quite simply, I share with board members and presidents, if it's only a board policy that doesn't manifest, it doesn't matter. So I encourage all board members and presidents to develop these policies, strategic policies that manifest across campus and all programs. The focus of our strategic priority, number one, around JDE&I, is really focused on creating a better world for all. And so everyone is treated with dignity and respect. And I share that with many people when I speak with different audiences. And some people think I'm kind of crazy because that's incredibly aspirational, that higher education and AGB should be focused on creating a better world for others so that everyone is treated with dignity and respect. And I said, well, the reason it's a strategic priority is because it's long-term, it's incredibly difficult, and it's incredibly important. So I thank you for joining AGB and all of our partners and members to help shape a world that's better for all. So in closing, higher education, as you know it, is a force for good and for our future. And treating everyone with dignity and respect is the responsibility of everyone within not only education, but also within higher education. So thank you for the opportunity to join you today or this evening or this morning or whatever time it is where you are. And I look forward to witnessing your future accomplishments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Staver, once again for an inspiring talk highlighting the problems of the higher education sector right now and also the opportunity to reform higher education within the United States and also globally. And with this, we are going to move on to our next set of speakers who are all distinguished academics and educational leaders from different parts of the world, from Canada, from United States, from Malaysia, from Nepal, and from India. Our first speaker in this series is Dr. Henry Giroux. I can see he's already in the meeting room. Many of you, I'm sure all of you in this meeting room know very well about Dr. Giroux's work. He is the distinguished speaker and distinguished professor and public intellectual. Currently holds his professorship at McMaster University, Chair for Scholarship in the Public Interest in English and Cultural Studies Department, and Paulo Freire Distinguished Scholar Professorship in Critical Pedagogy. In 2002, he was named as one of the top 50 educational thinkers of the modern period in 50 Modern Thinkers on Education from Piaget to the Present as part of Routledge's Key Guides publication series. He was named by the Toronto Star as one of the 12 Canadians changing the way we think. He's a frequent contributor to online sources such as Truthout, Counterpunch, Salon, and has published in a number of academic journals and over 500 scholarly articles. His most recent books are Neoliberalism's War on Higher Education, on Critical Pedagogy, and Race, Politics, and Pandemic Pedagogy, Education in Time of Crisis, which is forthcoming in the new year. We are all looking forward to reading his new book. Over to you, Dr. Giroux.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm certainly honored to be here with such a distinguished group of educators. And I'm particularly grateful for being able to wish my friend Noam Chomsky a happy birthday, given the contributions that he made. And I'm going to start my talk by, first of all, celebrating Noam in a way, and then I'm going to talk about something a little more different. I'm going to talk about the centrality of politics to education and how crucial I think that is. Throughout his entire life, Noam Chomsky has used his knowledge, skills, and stature as a public intellectual to advocate for radical change in societies that have not lived up basically to the ideals of a meaningful democracy. He's made it clear that intellectuals, artists, educators, administrators, and other cultural workers have a responsibility to use education to address grave social problems such as the threat of nuclear war, environmental degradation, and of course, the sharp deterioration of democracy itself. His academic work and public interventions have become a model for enriching public life and addressing staggering forms of economic inequality, needless wars, and class and racial injustices. He's worked tirelessly to inspire individuals and social movements to unleash the energy, the insights, and the passion necessary to keep alive the spirit and the promises and ideals of what we might call a radical democracy. He models his own work on the responsibility of intellectuals by drawing from a wide variety of disciplinary fields, and in doing so, he embraces a notion of education that turns intellectual and cultural workers into border crossers and refiners of the moral imagination. This talk is dedicated to his courage and his relentless spirit of resistance. Across the globe, democratic institutions such as the independent media, schools, the legal system, certain financial institutions, and higher education are under siege. Education has increasingly become a tool of domination as right-wing pedagogical apparatuses controlled by the entrepreneurs of hate attack workers, the poor, people of color, refugees, immigrants from the South, and others considered disposable. In the midst of an era when an older social order is crumbling and the new one is struggling to define itself, there emerges a time of confusion, danger, and moments of great restlessness. The present moment is once again at an historical conjuncture in which the forces of domination and the forces of democracy and authoritarianism are sort of vying for shaping a future that appears to be either an unthinkable nightmare or a realizable dream. It's hard to imagine a more urgent moment for taking seriously the call to make education central to politics. The rule of authoritarianism is imposed less and less by military coups than it is through elections subverted by the force of oppressive forms of education that extend, of course, from schools to social media and other cultural apparatuses. The educational force of the cultural sphere is now amplified by the merging of power and new instruments of culture that have produced powerful sites of struggle in an attempt to basically normalize and legitimate dominant ideas, values, and social relations. Making education central to politics means, whether we're talking about public education, higher education, or in the larger cultural sphere, it seems to me what it means is working to create those formative cultures in the service of democratic modes of agency, desire, and identities. If education is going to work in the service of democracy, it needs a new vision and a language in which the call for real change resonates with the concrete needs, desires, values, and modes of identification that working class people of every stripe can understand and relate to critically. It seems to me that education must be broadly understood as taking place in various locations and defined in part to the interrogation of the claims that it makes on democracy itself. As Ariel Dorfman argues, it's time to create the cultural institutions and pedagogical conditions in multiple sites, extending from higher education and the mainstream press to the online digital world in order to unleash, as he says, the courage, the energy, the joy, and yes, the compassion with which rebellious millions can defy fear and keep hope alive in these traumatic times. Pierre Bourdieu has argued that important forms of domination are not only economic, but also intellectual and pedagogical, and lie on the side of belief and persuasion, making it all the more important to recognize that intellectuals bear an enormous responsibility for challenging various forms of domination. I mean, this raises a very interesting question about the role of academics, not just administrators, in basically linking their work to important social problems so that the university can be seen as a place that can defend not only the conditions of their own labor, but their relevance to society in general. In a time when truth has become, malleable and people are being told that the only obligations of citizenship is to consume, language has become thinner and more individualistic, detached from history and more self-oriented, all the while undermining viable democratic social spheres as spaces where politics can bring people together and collective agents are willing to push at the frontiers of what we might call the political and moral imagination. And it seems to me that as educators and intellectuals, it's crucial to remember that there is no genuine democracy without the presence of citizens willing to hold power accountable, engage in forms of moral witnessing, break the continuity of common sense, and challenge the normalization of anti-democratic institutions, policies, ideas, and social relations. Making education central to politics, it seems to me, suggests that we ask uncomfortable questions about what Arundhati Roy calls our values, our traditions, our vision for the future, our responsibility as citizens, the legitimacy of our democratic institutions, the role of the state, the police, the army, and the intellectual community. Democracy's survival depends upon a set of habits, values, ideas, and culture and institutions that sustain it. Democracy is both fragile and always unfinished, and its fate are not, and its future and fate are not only a political issue, but also an educational one as well. In the end, there is no democracy without an informed public. And there is no justice without a language critical of injustice. Democracy should be a way of thinking about education, and education should be a way of implementing democracy. One that thrives on connecting pedagogy to the practice of freedom, learning to ethics, and agency to the imperatives of social responsibility and the public good. In the age of nascent fascism, it is not enough to connect education with the defense of reason, informed judgment, and critical agency. It must also be aligned with the power and potential of collective resistance. We live in dangerous times. Consequently, there's an urgent need for more individuals, institutions, and social movements to come together in the belief that the current regimes of tyranny can be resisted, that alternative futures are possible, and that acting on these beliefs through collective resistance will make radical change happen. It seems to me that, to go back to Noam Chomsky's work is infused with the notion that we should all take seriously, and that notion is that history is open, and that it's necessary for people to think otherwise in order to act otherwise, especially if we want to imagine and bring into being alternative democratic futures and horizons of possibility. Chomsky's insistence, his importance in developing a vision infused with a mix of justice, hope, and struggle has never been more important for educators than it is today. Moreover, in the face of the emerging tyranny and fascist politics that is spreading around the globe, it's time to heed its call to merge a sense of moral outrage with a sense of civic courage and collective action. At the very least, education is central to politics because it provides the foundation for those of us who believe that democracy is a site of struggle, which can only be engaged through an awareness of both its fragility and its necessity. What we cannot do is look away. Goya was right when he warned, the sleep of reason produces monsters. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Giroux, for your talk and for reminding us of Chomsky's own writings and thoughts on democracy and faith in the power of the people for a better future. And I'm sure we are going to see a better world, and we are going to all strive and work together and struggle together, as you mentioned, for a better, more democratic future. With this, I would really like to move, thank you once again, and move on to our next speaker from Malaysia, Professor, he's over here. Yes, he's in the meeting room, Professor Dizul Kifli Abdul Razak, who is currently Rector of International Islamic University in Malaysia. He was the Vice Chancellor of the university prior to this, between 2000 and 2011. He is also the immediate past president of International Association of Universities, which is a UNESCO-affiliated organization based in Paris. Professor Razak was the first Asian recipient of the prestigious 2017 Gilbert Medal and focusing on fostering global citizenship, encouraging institutional innovation. He's a fellow of the Academy of Sciences in Malaysia, the World Academy of Art and Science, and the World Academy of Islamic Management. He was an invited speaker at 2015 Nobel Dialogue in Sweden and 2020 Nobel Prize Dialogue in South Korea. scheduled in October 2021. Recently, he was also appointed a member of Qatar Foundation Higher Education Strategy Advisory Panel. Over to you, Professor Razak.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, greeting of peace. Dr. Mukherjee, Dr. Ghuli, Professor Chomsky, happy birthday. I'm indeed very fortunate to be here and more fortunate to talk after Dr. Henry Gu. I think I've been reading most of his work, and I hope what I'm going to say today basically resonates to what he's trying to say. Now, I probably am the first speaker coming from the third world, and therefore my take on this perhaps will be slightly different. And for that, I would want to share with you some of our thoughts using some of the slides, given the 10 minutes that I've got, right? My instinct, basically, as far as global higher education is concerned, we are here at this stage, basically, a whole system, at least in Malaysia, is just like a factory. We produce people for all these things. At the end of the day, we talk about employability, employment for the market, and all the question of livelihoods. And this is how actually our system works. It is almost like a factory, going out at 8, coming out at 5, and that's about it. We sit for the exams, and at the end of the day, the student will be considered qualified for jobs in industry and so on and so forth. That has been my idea of what education is all about. And therefore, we begin to see some of the lacunas that we have got. The whole idea of this kind of a system becomes dehumanizing for me. And we've got an acronym for it. We call it WEIRD. One is what we call westernized, because it comes from the Industrial Revolution, economic-centric, industrial-led, reputational obsessed with the ranking and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, it becomes very dehumanizing as far as the human person is concerned. So what do we do next? We do, therefore, when looking at what we need to do is not to talk about just men or manpower. We need to talk about the whole world as such, to expand this whole idea of humanity rather than individuals. I think some of the speakers has addressed it. How can we collectively work together and understand one another so that the world becomes a more peaceful world, a more understanding world, and so on and so forth. Now, as far as training the mind is concerned, we need to train another part of the body. In the Eastern tradition, I think the heart is also a seat of intellects that we need to work on so that it can work within the mind and the heart together so that we have this complete person that we understand today as far as education is concerned. We need to move from machine, which is just high tech, to go into what I call the high touch. How do you humanize this machine? There were questions here, can we work as fast as the industry? I think as a human person, I don't think we can work as fast as the industry. And therefore, what do we do? How do you humanize the industry as such so that we can work together with them without sacrificing human values and also human livelihood at the same time? So at the end of the day, what we are talking about, not just the marketplace or livelihood, we talk about life itself. Do we teach about life in schools today, or do we just teach about livelihood? How do you humanize life so that we begin to understand that at the end of the day, it is not the 4M that is important. I think the 4M to me is almost like a sunset thing. The sunrise will be about the 4H, which is humanity, heart, high touch, and also humanizing life. And for that, I think we need to change the way we look at it, particularly when it comes to the COVID environment. The COVID tells us the system, the industry does not work anymore. Most of the industry will close down. If they promise us job at one time, now they say there's no more jobs for you. The industry can close down and do whatever they want. University cannot close down. We still need to work. We still need to educate. We still need to bring life to our own students and in fact the world as such. And therefore there's a lacuna, there's a kind of a contradiction between these two, that the industry is no longer dependable and we need to find a more dependable partner as such. Yeah? And suddenly we see other voices coming, no less than United States, about all life matters, right? Instead of I can't breathe, now we say I want to breathe for justice. And we say we need to stop this bullying, this minority or whatever you call them. You need to stop bullying because they are part and parcel of that set of humanity that we are supposed to educate, and they need to understand one another. And this needs to come through education wherever they are. And therefore, the whole emphasis, therefore, needs to change. And what is the change? We need to transform. And what is it to transform? I hear many people talk about the economic transformation and so on and so forth, but I think there's a kind of transformation in terms of value. To understand humanity, you must be able to understand what sympathy is all about. If you don't have sympathy, you can't even understand your neighbor, let alone the whole world that is in front of you with the whole problem that needs to be solved, given some of the issues that you've talked about, immigration, discrimination, and so on and so forth. Sympathy is a value that needs to be embedded in education throughout the world so that then we can join hands together because we understand what we are all about, culturally speaking, as far as Henry was talking about. Yeah? But that may not be enough. We need to also empathize, and this is where the heart is. You want to study poverty, you cannot be just sitting in an air-conditioned room or in some very developed place without understanding what poverty is all about, going to the place where poverty actually takes place, to understand and to feel the kind of poverty that the people are feeling, the hunger that they're feeling, the kind of agonizing they're feeling. You need to be involved with them. You need to be part and parcel of that solution, that problem, before you can even understand the solution. I think some of the times we read textbooks, how to solve problems, but it is far cry from what we're experiencing, at least as part of the third world. Now, moving on from that, then you develop this idea of compassion. Somebody, I think, just now talks about compassion. Compassion is where you begin to understand that it is part of life, that you need to work for other people unconditionally. We don't do this because we get 2 credits or you're going to get recognition from somebody else. We do this because we are human enough to help other human beings. And that is the level of education that you need to have. And that can only happen when we have got a kind of humility in us. We as academics sometimes are very arrogant. We thought we can solve the problem just because we publish in the first tiered journal. Yeah. That is not what it is. I think there's a lot more to learn from indigenous community, the community that we have sidelined for a long time. We think they're uncivilized. There's a lot of wisdom in them. How do we learn from them? How do you make holistic education as such? Yeah? And therefore, we begin to think that we need to learn and to make education what we call the whole person education, not the human capital theory, but the whole human theory that needs to be brought in. And therefore, the movement from what I call weird to a wiser kind of a formula, meaning it has to be holistic, it has to be inclusive, it has to be sustainable, it has to be equitable, and also to be recyclable in the sense that everybody now needs to understand that everything can be shared and therefore be brought up into a place. And therefore, I would want to suggest that at the end of the day, we need to start moving into this humanizing life and make sure that we begin to work together as a holistic whole, using education as a platform, no matter we are, and begin to see that the marketplace is not the only place that we can work. There are other places that we can work. I think the Star Scholar Network is a fantastic place that we can work together to get this whole education, a whole person education worldwide, and hence then connect to what you call the human world. In our case, we call mercy to all, or rahmatan lil alamin, and that has something to do with what we are struggling now to look at the sustainable development goals that need to be accomplished 10 years from now in 2030, where education becomes a platform for everybody to work together. And on that note, I think we need to also understand while working for this, we need to work on the middle path. There's no extremism in one end, because according to Rumi, that's the only way to reach wisdom. And wisdom is something that we are lacking in education today. There's a lot of knowledge, but there's very little wisdom. We are drowned in knowledge, but I think we are still gasping for what wisdom is all about. And that's the only way, I think, to arrive at a human world, as it were. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for a very, very rich, culturally rich presentation and wonderful critique of also the mainstream system of education
very well presented, Professor Razak. Thank you very much, and especially also for that quote from Rumi towards the end of your presentation, one of my favorite poets and philosophers and thinkers. We are almost, actually we are running quite on time, and we should now move on to actually our host speaker, the professor and Vice Chancellor of Nepal University, who is that has been hosting the 2020 Star Scholars Network conference for the past 3 days. And our next speaker is Professor Laknath Sharma, who is the Vice Chancellor of Nepal Open University, the premier institution within Nepal offering higher education through open and distance learning mode. Nepal Open University's primary objective is to equip learners with knowledge, skills, and competencies connected to employability through flexible, learner-centered way and facilitated by technology. And following the principles of open and distance education, Nepal Open University has been doing an amazing work within the Nepali context. The organization of this conference is a proof of the excellent work he has been steering through his team of innovative and hardworking expert professors and staff at the university. Professor Sharma, over to you now. For your presentation, your address.
Thank you, Dr. Mausami. Good morning and good afternoon. Accept my greetings from Nepal, the Himalayan country, to all our respected dignitaries, professors, scholars in this today's session. First of all, let me allow to wish happy birthday, happy 92nd birthday to Professor Noam Chomsky, and also philosopher and Pacarella, whether I made a good pronunciation or not. And we conducted this international conference, Shaping a Human World, Global Perspective on Higher Education, very well. For that, I would like to express my special thanks to STARS Networks, especially the leadership of Dr. Gauli, who brought all of us together in the international network of higher education and international networks of great thinkers, scholars, and the peoples. That has given us a very immense opportunity of enlightening how the world is going ahead, how the world is facing different challenges, and how the world is managing to address those challenges through the medium of education and creating awareness to the people. This is a great opportunity to Nepal Open University. Thanks for this opportunity too. And also I would like to offer thanks to all who contributed directly and indirectly to make this conference successful. I believe this conference became very successful in the counting the viewer, the participants, 6,000 plus in yesterday's record. Today that will be double. So I do not consider only this day today is very significant to Nepal Open University and Nepal only because of completing the international conference successfully, having a great number of participants. The important thing is that today we got this opportunity of announcing Noam Chomsky Connection, Global Connection Awards. So we are very much connected to this award from today's onward. And this is a very historic day, very unique day to Nepal Open University and the Nepal too. Considering the educational status in Nepal, you all know and we all discuss in these 3 days what is happening in Nepal and how Nepal is proceeding to make its education better, learning from others. talking about the higher education participation, we have only 17% of the age group who are aspiring higher education. So we need to improve access, and as well as we need to improve equity and quality and making higher education very relevant to the local needs, to the need of the community and the personal needs of the students. Right now, what we have been doing in our higher education system is that thousands of colleges are teaching the same curriculum, same courses. That is not giving diversity, and that is not relevant to their needs. And the other important thing is that we are very much interested to bring the internationalization efforts here, making Nepal as the source country of the students to the developed higher education. And right now, we need to bring changes in this concept and in these trends of going many students, many graduates from Nepal to abroad for the study and staying them there. So having this international collaboration, we want to promote education in Nepal for its quality and making it more relevant. And for this, this network has given a very good opportunity to us. And regarding Noam Chomsky, when I was undergraduate student, I was a student of language and mathematics. Later, I turned my career to mathematics and being a teacher of mathematics. However, I am right now loving to read Noam Chomsky because I want to enlightenment from his readings, from his publications that about the equity, justice, human rights of the people whose voices are unheard and living an oppressive and tyrannical life from the powers and the powerful. Maybe there are different manifestations of powers and powerfuls. And his hundreds of books, hundreds of lectures, and hundreds of publications, they are the pearls of human civilization and will remain equally precious till the human worlds exist in the universe and there exists the conflict between the powers and powerless, and there are the issues of equity, justice, and humanity. So for this, for today, I would wish happy birthday, and also I would like to thanks to all the scholars from whom I listened today, Henry Girao, Pascara, and so many other whom I read. Being a mathematics person, I read a lot, but today I got this opportunity of being in presence and listening them. Thank you for this opportunity, Star Scholars Network, Dr. Walu, who contribute a lot to make this conference successful. Thank you very much. Namaste from Nepal, and I would like to welcome you one day in Nepal in person to all of you. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste, Dr. Sharma ji, and thank you very much for hosting the conference virtually this year. And definitely we look forward to visit Nepal and Kathmandu sometime in the future. We're now going to move from Asia, from Malaysia and Nepal, once again back to the United States to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Paul LeBlanc. He is president of Southern New Hampshire University since 2003. Under his leadership, Southern New Hampshire University has grown from 2,800 students to over 135,000 students and is the largest nonprofit provider of online and on-campus higher education in the United States. Prior to serving as the president of Southern New Hampshire from 1993 to 1996, he directed a technology startup for Houghton Mifflin Publishing Company and served as the president of Marlborough College at Vermont from 1996 to 2003. Over to you, President LeBlanc, for your address.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the kind introduction. I'm honored to be part of this group and to join you this evening here on the coast of Maine in the United States. We are riding, my family and I are enduring the pandemic in a little fishing village where we have a home, and it feels so lovely tonight to be connected with the world. So this is a wonderful opportunity, and also to be part of any group that's honoring Professor Chomsky, who figures so largely in the intellectual sort of landscape of American higher ed and all of us who care about the future. I'd like to say a little bit about what's happened with the pandemic in the United States with higher ed and then my own institution. I think it has not introduced anything new, but it has accelerated so much that we knew was happening and that needed to happen. So we have seen, of course, this massive, unplanned for experiment in which we have taken all of higher ed and moved it to digital delivery. And yes, we have students back on campuses, but oftentimes they're on campus but still learning through online delivery. And when this was happening, so many of our peer institutions were not prepared. This was not how they did their work. So we had lots and lots of phone calls from my colleague presidents. And I would say that 80% of the questions had to do with the delivery of the academic program. How do we think about this discipline? How do you do this lab? How do I think about faculty? Should it be synchronous or asynchronous? What do those trade-offs look like? What LMS should we be using? Right? So a lot of questions about delivery of the academic program. And I kept saying to my colleagues, you will not win or lose the game on your academic delivery. You have great faculty. They're dedicated. They will figure this out. Yes, there are a whole bunch of things we can talk about that will make that better, but the game will be win or lost in terms of how you connect with students as human beings. 80% of your questions should actually be about how do I connect with my students as people? So in that case, how are we talking about student mental health, for example? In the United States, even before the pandemic, we were seeing record levels of anxiety and depression. Our counseling services were overwhelmed, and it's much worse now. Right? We took record levels of mental health challenges, and we've layered on a pandemic, a global recession, and all kinds of civil strife in the United States. How do we support our students in that respect? How are we connecting them with their advisors? How are we making them feel part of a community? The residential campus is so much a part of the American higher educational model. And, students come to us for two jobs. I'm going to channel Clay Christensen, who passed away last year, the great Harvard Business School professor who wrote about disruptive innovation. He was a member of my board and he's an old friend. But if we think about jobs to be done, that body of work, students come to us for an academic experience, which will unlock opportunity for them. We all understand that. But they also come to us as young people in search of a developmental experience. They want to be part of an intentional community full of mentors, full of adults who understand them as people. If you ask most college graduates to list the most influential people in their lives, almost always there's a college faculty member in the top 5, maybe a high school teacher as well. But in all those cases, it's somebody that made them feel like they mattered. And here's the question I want to come back to, and it's based on a sociologist at Brown University named Greg Elliott, who writes about mattering. It's the most fundamental need as human beings. And it's critical and core to the magic that is at the heart of learning. We talk about learning science, and there are breathtaking breakthroughs in learning science. But in the end, the single most important thing is still somebody who makes you feel like you matter. And what we're seeing right now with distance or online learning in America because of the pandemic is we're losing students. Students don't feel connected. They don't feel a sense of affinity. They don't necessarily feel part of a group. And they desperately need that from a developmental perspective, but they need it from a learning perspective. So if I were giving counsel to how we think about the world going forward, a world where we will see online learning not only be common, but be accelerated, and we'll see all kinds of model of hybrid learning as well, is that we don't misframe the question. The question is not about technology. The question is not about virtual spaces. The question is really about the spaces of the heart, the human spaces in which people connect with each other. And as you design your programs, as you think about what students need, always start with the question of where are the most important human interactions? Where are those points where students feel like they're being made to matter? And I think part of what we've been able to do at 100, Professor, we've gone from 135,000 to overnight 152,000 because of the pandemic. So it's an amazing surge in enrollments. But I think, the thing that we are obsessive about is how do we keep that sense of personal mattering at scale? How do you make 152,000 students feel like they're the only student that matters to somebody? Because when an online learner is working from home, or they're in the dining room and they got their computer set up, but in the other room they can hear their family laughing, they're watching television, they're having fun, and this learner is looking at something that's hard. It's important to them that somebody's communicating that it matters, that they keep at it, that they stick with it. And it's not about discipline. It's not about the power structure of grades, which is really, I think, in some ways an almost unethical thing. It's actually about the intrinsic motivation that comes with, I want to learn because it matters to someone else that I learn. It matters to my family, but it matters to a faculty member, it matters to a staff person. So I will stop there and just say that I think we are on the verge of really breakthrough changes in the way we think about higher education. We are one of the last industries to fully embrace technology, right? Technology infuses our life in so many places, and higher education has come to it more slowly than many. But I think at this moment, we have an opportunity to reinvent higher education. And I will finish with this last question, which is that the other thing the pandemic has done is it not only has accelerated trends that we've seen for a long time, it has shown a very harsh light on the inequities in higher education. So in America, our students who are poor, our students of color, our students who lack access to computer technology or to broadband, we have students who are studying at 3 o'clock in the morning because that's the only time the one computer in their household is available. We have to be much better about equity because higher education, in my view, is fundamentally about human opportunity. And we don't want to be part of the problem, we want to be part of the solution. Until we address the equity issues more fully, we will continue to struggle in terms of the most important work we do, which is to transform our societies and to make opportunity available to the young people. So I'll stop there, but thank you so much for including me. I'm honored to be part of this conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. LeBlanc, for your address and highlighting the fact that the higher education sector has been a latecomer in terms of embracing of technology, and somehow this pandemic has pushed us to embrace it, and it's high time for us to think how we can make it more inclusive and accessible, and something, of course, open distance education sector has been doing for a while. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and experience. We are going to move back to Asia right now, particularly to India for our next two speakers. First in line is Dr. Pankaj Mittal, the Secretary General of the Association of Indian Universities. She's the second woman Secretary General of the Association in its 95 years of existence. She has been serving the higher education sector for over 3 decades in India at senior positions at the University Grants Commission. Dr. Mittal has been a Fulbright scholar. Currently, she's also member of the General Assembly of the Indian Council of Cultural Relations. Dr. Mittal has also served as the first regular Vice Chancellor of Bhagat Phul Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya in Haryana, the first rural women university of North India for 2 terms. She has been the recipient of the President of India Award in 2017 for digital initiatives in higher education. She has also received the first Padam Shri Subhashini Devi Award in 2018 for contributions in societal development and community engagement from the Chief Minister of the state of Haryana in North India, where our university, Opajindal Global University, is also located. And she's also recipient of Kimpro Gold Standard Award for Leadership in Education in the same year, 2018. Over to you, Dr. Pankaj Mittal.
Thank you, Mosami. Thank you very much for a generous introduction. And thanks to Dr. Uttam and Dr. Krishna for being constantly in touch in organizing this conference, and compliments to Star Scholars for holding the conference on such an important theme as creating a human world, how to create a human world. I will also join others in taking this opportunity to wish Professor Noam Chomsky 92nd happy birthday. May God give you a very long life full of peace and health. Most important things, peace and health. So wish you a very, very happy birthday. Now coming to the topic of the conference, you all know that India is a large country. And when it is a large country, we have lot of students in our universities and colleges. Right now, the enrollment in university is about 37 million. So you can imagine that if these 37 million students are taught to be more humane, if they are taught to be better citizens of India or the world, global citizens, how much the society will change. So therefore, when the students enters from the school to a college, it becomes the responsibility of the university or the college, especially the teachers, to make him not only an employable graduate, but a good citizen of the country. So how can they do it? That is the issue, that how these teachers help these students to become a good citizen of the country. So in my view, there are many roles which the teacher should be performing apart from teaching. First of all, when he's teaching, he is not only teaching the subject, he is not only giving the information to the students, but he is trying to make him or her a holistic human being by imbibing values into the student. He or she, the teacher, has to become a role model for the student. He cannot be only preaching that you do this, you do that. They have to become a role model for the students, because the students see towards their teacher as a role model. They want to become like a teacher, and if they really like a teacher, that teacher they remember for the lifetime. Therefore, teacher has to work like a role model for the student. The value systems like love, compassion, kindness, forgiveness, empathy, all this has to be imbibed into them. And then this cannot be done by way of a separate course. I mean, we cannot be introducing a 1 credit or a 2 credit course on value education to impart these values to the student. It has to be inbuilt. It has to be integrated with the entire curriculum, so that the entire curriculum, the conduct of the teacher, the conduct of the fellow students, everybody imbibes values into the system, values into the student. Similarly, the student has to be made aware of the student social responsibility. Like we say corporate social responsibility, in India we are talking about university social responsibility, that the universities have a responsibility towards the society where they are located. Because of the university, the community around the university should also develop. But over the years, what has happened is that there's a total disconnect between the university and the society. Rather, the people who are within the four walls of the university, they feel that they are some elite class, and the ones who are outside are lesser mortals. So we need to establish a connect so that the university teachers, university students, they feel a connection with the community, and they do many, many things which is for upliftment of the community, for the development of the society around the university. For example, when I was the vice chancellor of this rural women university, we did many, many things like adopting some villages, having some add-on courses, which were 50-50, means 50% in the classroom and 50% in the community. So our students used to go to the community, they used to go to the villages, talk to the village women, form self-help groups, and used to teach them, like for example, microfinancing. So they used to learn the nuances of microfinancing in the classroom, and they used to go to the village and form self-help groups and educate the village rural women to become, say, self-reliant and self-sufficient. Similarly, there was a lot of information on, I mean, one more thing which we should teach our students is also that we are not the only ones who can teach the society. Society can also teach us a lot many things. For example, we had a course in folk medicine. So folk medicine is an Indian indigenous system of medicine, and the knowledge is residing with mostly the community, especially the old men and women in the villages. So our students used to go to the old men and villages and talk to them that what are the remedies for simple diseases for the cattle as well as the humans. and then we used to document them. And then those village women, they were so happy to know that we also have something to contribute to the university. So this give and take keeps on happening. So these type of things we were doing to inculcate not only university social responsibility, but also teacher social responsibility, because teachers also have a responsibility towards the society. Similarly, the student social responsibility, because the students also have a responsibility towards the society. So we should not only talk of CSR, we should talk of USR, university social responsibility, TSR, teachers social responsibility, and SSR, student social responsibility. Now this I did at my university level, but then now it is becoming a national mission in India. National mission in two counts. One is that university social responsibility is taken as a primary objective of the higher education institutions, and there's a full-fledged program called, in India we call it Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, in which the universities are given the responsibility to take care of the society around the university. They are developing some small technologies for them, and that is being driven by IIT Delhi. IITs are the premium institutions in India. So IIT Delhi is driving this campaign in which the universities are asked to adopt some villages. They are asked to develop some small-time technologies for them. They are even asked to develop some sort of customize the technologies which are already existing to suit the needs of the rural people. So this way we are trying to see that the university students connect with the community. They don't feel that we are the sort of the people who are the better lot because we are educated, and the ones who are not educated, especially till higher education, they are not so that good. So that type of a connect we are trying to establish. And even for the university students, I mean, we understand that when a student joins a university, he is coming from a school environment to a university environment, and there are a lot of things which the student should be knowing. So the University Grants Commission, which is the apex higher education regulatory authority in India, they have constituted a program called Student Induction Program. In India, we call it Diksha Arambh. Diksha Arambh means the starting of the education. Diksha Arambh, so student induction program, which talks about SAGE, S-A-G-E, SAGE, and SAGE means socializing, associating, governing, and experiencing. When we talk of socializing, means the student has to talk, I mean that student induction program, the student should be meeting the students, old students, new students, teachers, staff, everybody. So socializing should be there. Associating means visiting the campus, visiting the lab, visiting the library, visiting the local area or the city, so that he gets associated with it. G is governing. Governing means he has to know the rules and regulations of the university. What are the do's, what are the don'ts? So he should be knowing everything about that. And E is experiencing, that is, he has to experience the life in the university, both in terms of classroom teaching, also outside the classroom teaching. It could be physical activities, it could be spiritual activities, it could be mental activities, it could be just bonding with the friends or bonding with the seniors. So all this is experiencing, that experiential learning. So therefore they devised a proper curriculum so that the student learns all these universal human values like love, compassion, kindness, non-violence, truth, forgiveness. For example, one very interesting example was given there. For example, like if you go to the mess of a hostel and sit there, and if a student is having the food, and if you ask him, whom are you grateful for the food you're having? The student will think for a minute, and then he'll say, I'm grateful to my parents because they paid for the mess fee, because of which I'm getting the food. Then we ask him, what about the person who cooked the food? He says, yes, I'm also grateful to the person who cooked the food, the cook over in the mess. But then what about the people who grew the food? What about the people who was growing, say, rice or wheat? What about the people who were growing the spices? What about the people who were transporting it to you? I mean, there are so many people involved in one meal of yours, that you should be understanding that you have to be grateful to many people. So that gratitude, the feeling of gratitude, that is very, very important for the students. But it can be taught in many examples. It cannot be taught in theory. We cannot include a chapter on gratitude and say that, okay, you can learn gratitude. But when we sit across with the student and talk to them on many issues, like in India right now, road rage is very, very common, because the youngsters get angry so fast that if something happens on the road, immediately a fight starts. So how to induce forgiveness in them, how to induce peace in them, how to induce non-violence in them, that can be taught in the daily life by giving examples, by the teachers, by connecting with the students on a daily basis. It cannot be taught in the classrooms, it has to be experienced. So that experiential learning for creating a more human world is very, very important. And India now has a new education policy, and the new education policy has come after 34 years, and it is a student-centric policy in which the student is given all the freedoms, and the focus of the policy is the student. And the policy does talk about creating a holistic, for the holistic development of the student, so that we create a student who is not only an employable graduate. We are not only worried about the pay packages, we are also worried about the how good that person will be as a citizen of the country. How will he contribute to the nation as a peace-loving, as a law-abiding citizen of the country? If you are very much educated, but then suppose you walk on the road and start littering the road, if you start fighting with your neighbors, so that is not a good citizen, that is not an educated person. So educated person doesn't only mean that he has the full knowledge or he is rightly employable or gainfully employable. Good citizen also means that he knows how to conduct himself or herself in the society. So that is being taught in our universities and colleges. And I personally feel, because a large population of the country is in universities and colleges, and that too at an age when it is a formation stage, when they are forming themselves. So that is a very good area where these type of this can be nurtured. I mean, students can be so that the students can be nurtured, and they can be taught all these human values, so that that leads to the holistic development of the students. With this, I would like to stop here. Once again, thanks to everybody, and once again, a very, very happy birthday to Professor Chomsky. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mittal, for sharing your thoughts and your ideas on education, and specifically highlighting the role of values in education. And I know personally very well, when you talk about the social responsibility of the teacher, how you yourself have exemplified that throughout your own career. And when you talk about values in education and how you have yourself exemplified that through your own actions. You are not somebody who is talking theoretically, but somebody who has practiced it over the years with regards to your own work with your students at the university. When you were teaching, and then as an institutional leader when you were leading Bhagat Phul Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya, and also at the national level. Thank you very much, Dr. Mittal, for sharing your thoughts and your experiences. We are now going to move on to our next speaker, and I'm really, really glad to introduce our next speaker, Professor C. Rajkumar, our Vice Chancellor of the university where I personally work, and he is with us here in the meeting room. I can see him. Let me introduce Professor C. Rajkumar to all of you. Professor C. Rajkumar is a Rhodes Scholar and founding Vice Chancellor of O.P. Jindal Global University in India. He was appointed as a Vice Chancellor of the university at a very young age, when he was just 34 in 2009, when the university was established. And right now, Jindal Global University is one of the only 20 universities in India and the only non-STEM university which has been declared as an institution of eminence by the government of India. Under his leadership, our university is a unique institution that began modestly with just 100 students and 10 full-time faculty members. But in 10 years, the university has now grown and has become an institution of national and international reputation, with over 6,500 students and 830 plus full-time faculty members as we are here in the year 2020. Professor Kumar is an accomplished legal scholar and works in the field of human rights and development, comparative constitutional law, legal education, and higher education. He has written 7 books and over 150 publications to his credits, which has been published in widely peer-reviewed journals, law reviews in Australia, Hong Kong, India, Japan, Singapore, UK, and the United States. Over to you, Dr. Raj. We are looking forward to hear you now.
Thank you very much, Maushami, and good evening to our friends in the United States, and good morning in India, good afternoon to other friends in Southeast Asia. It's such a privilege for me personally to be here and also to speak after Dr. Pankaj Mittal, who is a great source of inspiration for many of us in India. Hello and namaste from India to the members of the Star Scholars Network around the world, the Nepal Open University, and all distinguished speakers at this very prestigious 2020 Star Conference closing ceremony. Now, thank you particularly for having me here today. My special gratitude for this invitation to the President of the Star Scholars Network, Dr. Uttam Gauli, our good friend, Dr. Krishna Bista, the Vice President, other distinguished members of the leadership team of the Star Scholars Network, in particular, the Vice Chancellor of Nepal Open University, Professor Leknath Sharma, who I had the privilege to hear his erudite address, and of course, my dear colleague, Dr. Maushami Mukherjee, who is a fellow and India country director of the Star Scholars Global Network. It's indeed a very special privilege to speak at the 2020 Star Network Conference closing ceremony, particularly because of the fact that we are commemorating the 92nd birthday of such a visionary individual, Professor Dr. Noam Chomsky, a prolific scholar, a public intellectual who has inspired a generation of scholars globally through his scholarship and public advocacy work for human flourishing and development. In fact, as a student, both at Oxford and Harvard universities many years ago, I could only hear him from distance in many of those occasions. And it's a personal privilege for me to join hands with others around the world to celebrate his life and contribution. In particular, I would like to say namaste and happy birthday to Professor Chomsky. It's indeed an honor to have this occasion celebrated, but also I'm truly humbled to have my presence here. It's wonderful to see that from this year, the Star Scholars Network will be recognizing senior and junior scholars with the A. Noam Chomsky Global Connections Award for their outstanding achievement and success in establishing transnational research networks, scholarship, and public engagement. Indeed, one cannot think of a better representation of how global connections can be usefully leveraged for scholarship and human development than Professor Chomsky himself. His life, his scholarship, and his public advocacy work are truly global in nature. His work as an engaged scholar and public intellectual transcends geopolitical and disciplinary boundaries. He has indeed been a role model in shaping the world around us today. His significant contributions has informed research and scholarship across numerous fields, including cognitive science, analytical philosophy, and linguistics, and many more. He has been a committed advocate of academic freedom and the responsibility of academics as intellectuals, the issue that deeply concerns us, and I'll come back to it in a minute. Professor Chomsky's strong voice against oppression around the world has particularly inspired many academic intellectuals and even the masses of people's movements in the developing world. His contributions as a historian, essayist, political analyst, and social critic have been deeply inspiring. The very belief in the power and strength and diversity of views, indeed, has been the very fuel to the engine of democracy in India and also other democracies around the world. In India, of course, being the largest democracy in the world, home of a wide range of diverse views across a population of over 1.3 billion people. But beyond that, the fact that we have 850 million people who are less than 35 years of age. The life expectancy of India as a country is nearly 71. When most parts of the world will become older, India will be younger. And young Indians, I believe, will also be shaping the future of India and around the world along with others. And this is exactly the reason why we need to be conscious of the role and responsibility of universities that Professor Noam Chomsky strongly and fervently argued. Speaking truth to the power and authoritarian regimes emerging in the world's most powerful democracy in recent years as well, Professor Chomsky has once again asserted his faith in democracy, emphasizing the role of global public opinion as an emerging second superpower in his book, Who Rules the World? In fact, Professor Chomsky's work has been extended beyond geographical boundaries to make a global impact. In another book with Robert Pollin on the climate crisis and the global Green New Deal, Professor Chomsky raised his strong voice against the climate crisis and argued against the misplaced concerns regarding the transition to a green economy, leading to economic calamities and unemployment. Despite the crisis, the book provides hopes for us and demonstrates how this crisis can be overcome through global solidarity and connections. Of course, as we speak, we are in the middle of another global crisis, the coronavirus pandemic. Human history tells us that viruses, diseases, and pandemics are not new. The human struggle to find a cure for these diseases and pandemics also demonstrate the important role global connections in research and collaborations have played both in the past and contemporary times. As we speak, many scientists and research laboratories around the world are collaborating to develop a vaccine against the COVID-19. I am sure humanity will emerge victorious again, as we have already seen its early signs. As Professor Chomsky said, and I quote, "In this possibly terminal phase of human existence, democracy and freedom are more than just ideals to be valued. They may be essential to survival," unquote. Today, as we pave our paths into a post-pandemic world, the importance of solidarity, democratic values, and global collaborations have once again been elevated in this conference as well. The youth of today will move into positions of leadership and power to carve a stronger future of nations across the world. And I'm sure that the Global Connections Awards instituted in Professor Chomsky's name will inspire generations of scholars in the future to achieve the vision of shaping a humane world. On that note, as we look forward to the future, I hope that next year we can welcome all of you to come to India for the STAR 2021 conference physically, hopefully. We look forward to hosting you at OP Jindal Global University in Sonipat in India. Our university is a social science and humanities oriented university with 10 schools today. We have focused on creating a multidisciplinary education to ensure organic growth in diverse views among the youth. In the context of the current importance of environment protection, I must share with you that last year we launched the 9th school of the university, the Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability. And also we've been running academic programs in collaboration with WWF and other leading national and international organizations for teaching advocacy in environmental issues. As I end my reflections today, I would like to recognize the role and importance of universities and scholars in shaping the future of the world. I cannot imagine any other organization or institution besides a university, an academic institution, that is more suited to provide the ethical and moral leadership in the pursuit of ideas that will shape the future. Ideas that are expressed and written with autonomy, independence, and courage of conviction. But the heart of this effort is the work that all of us need to do for strengthening democracy and democratic institutions for the pursuit of justice around the world, transcending all boundaries and barriers. Professor Chomsky has been a voice of hope for millions of people around the world who seek an alternative to injustice and oppression. Over and over again, Professor Chomsky has raised the voice against authoritarian regimes for democracy and the rule of law for the people, of the people, and by the people. We need to remember the prophetic words of Professor Chomsky in his work, Manufacturing Consent, and I quote, "If you believe in freedom of speech, you believe in freedom of speech for views you don't like," unquote. As the STAR Scholars Network emphasizes, advancing global social mobility through human connection is crucial for research and development. We need similar collaborations and global solidarity in all fields of knowledge creation for public advocacy and service to humanity, as Professor Chomsky has reiterated. Otherwise, the entire sustainability of our planet Earth will be in question. In this regard, I must congratulate the STAR Scholars Network as it has embraced the concept of Ubuntu, Ubuntu essentially means, and I quote, "I am what I am because of who we all are." The word Ubuntu has its origins in one of the Bantu dialects of Africa. It is a traditional African philosophy that provides as an understanding of ourselves in relation to the world. According to Ubuntu, and I quote, "There exists a common bond between us all, and it is through this bond, through our interaction with our fellow human beings, that we discover our own human qualities," unquote. Or as the Zulus would say, and I quote, "that a person is a person through other persons. We affirm our humanity when we acknowledge that of others," unquote. With those words, I would like to once again congratulate the Star Scholars Network, and of course, personally wish Professor Noam Chomsky a very happy birthday. We look forward to hosting him back in India and at OP Jindal Global University in the near future. I sincerely hope all of you remain safe and healthy, and together we will be able to overcome this crisis that has struck humanity. Let's join hands in solidarity and help in contributing to a better future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Raj. What a tribute to Professor Chomsky, and those words from you inviting everybody to India next year. With this, I would now invite my colleague, Dr. Rajika Bhandari, to lead the last half of this closing ceremony. Rajika, over to you.
Thank you, Maushmi. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me clearly?
Yes,
okay,
of course.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I know I'd lost the audio somewhere along the middle earlier on. So before we move on to the last portion, I too want to thank all of the preceding panelists and Dr. Raj for such compelling remarks, for taking us through a tour of the world of different education philosophy. And certainly bringing in
that has struck humanity. Let's join hands in solidarity and help in.
I think we have, yeah, great, okay. And for really bringing out the angle of the global South, I loved Dr. Mittal's remarks about the responsibility of universities. And certainly that is a big conversation globally as well, as we think about the role of higher education in sustainable development. So thank you all for those wonderful insights. Before we move on in the program, I actually want to call very quickly on Dr. Rosalind Raby. She was to speak earlier in the evening, and I know we lost her. So Dr. Raby, if I may call on you very quickly, by way of introduction again, Dr. Rosalind Raby is the director of the California Colleges of International Education and a very widely regarded leader in our field. So Rosalind, if I may call on you to address us briefly, and then we will move on with the other panelists.
I will, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Dr. Chomsky, I want to wish you a joyous birthday, as you are a symbol of hope. And I'd like to talk about hope just for a second. I finished my last class tonight, which is why I couldn't come earlier. My students are largely first generation. They all came to this country as young children, and they are struggling to make their way in the world. This was such a difficult semester for them. They had such challenges in terms of health, in terms of supporting their family, in terms of providing the context for how they place their mental health in a very challenging context, but they had a hunger for learning. They came to class, they participated, and it was that hunger that drove them forward. They embraced the power of learning, and that is what this conference is. The power of internationalization, the power of sharing, and the power of taking ideas and transforming them to the future. I want to take the joy of what this STAR conference is in terms of the promise of learning and the promise of learning from each other, listening, taking our passion and moving that forward. This conference has captured the hope of the future, and I am so honored to be part of the event. And I will be very brief on that note, Rajika. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raby. I am so glad we were able to have you connect back in to share those very inspiring and moving words with us, especially from the perspective of your students. So thank you for that. So we are at the final part of the program, and we're all waiting for the awards ceremony as well. But before that, I would like to invite Dr. Glenda Prime to address us briefly. Dr. Prime is the Dean of the College of Education and Urban Studies at Morgan State University. She is also a science educator and researcher and has published numerous articles on science and technology education, and most recently has published a book chapter on technology education. And with that, I would like to invite Dr. Prime, Dean Prime, to please address us. And I should also thank you and all your colleagues at Morgan State University for hosting this wonderful event. So over to you, Dr. Prime. You're muted, Dr. Prime.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm deeply honored to be a part of this event and to bring you greetings from the School of Education and Urban Studies. Morgan State University has been designated by the state of Maryland as the preeminent urban research university. And this designation, as well as the history of the institution as a historically Black university, urges upon us a unique role in the higher education landscape, both of the state and indeed of the United States. A role in which shaping of a more humane world is paramount. We embrace as our mission the
Dr. Prime, we lost you.
That are as pandemic as the coronavirus is right now. I am very proud that the School of Education and Urban Studies is the academic home of Dr. Uttam Gauli and Dr. Bister, who play such a pivotal role in this organization. As I reflected on the very timely theme of it occurred to me that at the basis of the inhumaneness in our world is the tacit assumption that inequity is inevitable, and that the creation of a more humane world requires us to reject that assumption. Just think of pervasive terms like first and third world, and majority and minority. Those terms don't just imply a benign difference, but they really imply a status differential. And with that, an assumption of an equal entitlement to the world's resources. The term betrays at best a tacit in every aspect of human activity and manifests itself in health, economic, environmental, and educational disparities. Our only hope of creating a more humane world is the intentional and systematic dismantling of the structures that maintain those processes and practices of inequity. Higher education has a crucial role in doing this. The research that we do and the preparation of researchers that takes place in our institutions must be based on different criteria of worth. It has been the case for a long time that the only criterion of worth in the natural sciences and in technology has been how much wealth does it create. But we need to remind ourselves that all technologies, all of them have winners and losers. And unless we take into account the perspective of the losers, we are doomed to recreate over and over the inequities that make our world as inhumane as it is. And I want to say that this theme, I hope that it has caused us to challenge those inequities. And it's very interesting that we're celebrating the Professor Chomsky's birthday at the same time that we are focused on this theme, because his work has laid bare many of the inequities that lie at the basis of the inhumanity and the inhumaneness that defines our world. I want to congratulate the Star Scholars Conference for this work, and I want to say that I do hope that the conference will result and has resulted in renewed thinking, and not just an opportunity for us to share ideas, but an opportunity for us to be disruptive and transformative as we think about creating a more humane world. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today from all around the world. My name is Anthony Ogden, and as the Star Scholars Network's Vice President of International Learning and Engagement, and as Chair of the 2020 Awards Committee, it is my honor and privilege to announce the 2020 award winners of the A. Noam Chomsky Global Connections Awards. The Global Connection Awards recognize star scholars for their achievements and distinct contributions to transnational research that demonstrates the very best of scholarly collaboration among scholars around the world. For the first time this year, the Star Scholars Network provides awards in 3 distinct categories: our North Star Medal of Lifetime Achievement, our Shining Star Achievement in Research Award, and our Rising Star Emerging Scholar Certificate. My time is very limited, so without further ado, and in the interest of time, let us go ahead and begin. The North Star Medal of Lifetime Achievement is the Star Scholar Network's premier acknowledgement of outstanding achievement and success in transnational research. The medal honors a senior scholar whose lifelong service, leadership, and contributions serve as a guiding North Star for scholarly contribution in research. I am humbled and honored to announce that the recipient of our 2020 North Star Medal of Lifetime Achievement goes to none other than Professor Elspeth Jones. Professor Elspeth Jones is Emerita Professor of Internationalization of Higher Education at Leeds Beckett University in the UK, and is an internationally recognized thought leader, author, and researcher. With over 40 years in the field, Professor Jones is the founding editor of the influential Routledge book series, Internationalization in Higher Education. She has worked with scholars across 6 continents on more than 20 books. She has been involved in funded research and development projects in 25 countries and with a range of cross-national institutions, including the International Association of Universities, the European Parliament, the European Commission, and Columbus Association. Now, please be sure to check out Professor Jones's YouTube series, where she features conversations with a diverse range of international educators around the globe. Professor Jones's research interests include the internationalization of the curriculum, intercultural competency development, inclusive and integrated internationalization strategies, and the student experience of internationalization, including personal and professional outcomes from international mobility. She serves on the advisory board of the Journal of Studies in International Education. She is the recipient of the European Association for International Education Award for Excellence in Research. Professor Elspeth, congratulations. We'd like to invite you to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ogden. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning in the UK, so I'm trying to stay awake. I'm extremely humbled to be the inaugural recipient of the North Star Medal of Lifetime Achievement. And I'm very grateful to the Star Scholars Network for this great award. These Global Connections Awards mean a lot to me because Global Connections have been in my blood really since I began to learn French at the age of 7. And a while ago, I wrote that foreign language study helps us to question the perspectives that we view as normal, helps us challenge our ethnocentrism. And fluency in another language means engaging with alternative worldviews, deconstructing the linguistic world as we know it, tolerating ambiguity, and embracing cultural otherness. Well, these are all basic principles in the internationalization of higher education, which seeks to inspire all our students to think in global rather than insular or national terms. So through internationalization and decolonization of the curriculum, we encourage them to act in ways that advance social justice and help to shape a more humane, inclusive, and equitable world. Now, Professor Chomsky is recognized for his influence as a public intellectual in so many fields, but back in the 1970s, when my husband Steve Smith and I were students of linguistics, his work had already radically changed the way human language was viewed, and his was the leading voice. Disrupting the field so fundamentally as he did led other scholars to think differently about language, whether or not they agreed with his views. And I believe that those of us in international education and research now need to be just as disruptive and help to challenge the parochialism and nationalism which have been so prevalent around the world. As Professor Giroux said earlier, we need to make education, in this case, international education, central to politics. As you can imagine, I'm deeply honoured to receive an award associated with Professor Chomsky's name, but I'm especially grateful to the many gifted scholars, students, colleagues and friends all over the globe whom I've been privileged to work and engage with over the past 40 years. So my thanks go to all of them and of course to my wonderful family for their love and support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Jones. And please, everyone, join me in congratulating and thanking Professor Jones for her lifetime of contribution to our collective research. Thank you very much. And if I may just add on a personal note, thank you as well from me for all of the personal mentorship, advice, and leadership that you've given to me over the years. I'm very, very pleased for you today. Thank you very much, Professor Jones. And moving ahead with, I'd like now to turn to the second award category, our Shining Star Achievement in Research Award. Now, the Star Scholars Network also celebrates exemplary achievements in transnational research. The Shining Star Achievement in Research Award recognizes influential scholarly contributions in any discipline, whether they be in the form of scholarly journals, books, book chapters, or other expressions of scholarly collaboration. We recognize 2 exemplary Shining Stars this year. Our first recipient of the Shining Star Achievement in Research Award goes to Dr. Bach Tran. Dr. Tran is a pioneer in promoting research and evidence-based medicine in the Vietnamese healthcare system. Currently, Dr. Tran is vice head of the Department of Health Economics at Hanoi Medical University and adjunct professor at Johns Hopkins University. His research includes the application of epidemiological economic models to explore the determinants of infectious disease outbreaks, assess nations' vulnerability, and identify cost-effective systems and human behavioral responses. Dr. Tran earned his PhD in health economics and policy from the University of Alberta. He is the winner of numerous international and domestic research awards, including the Hopkins Center for AIDS Research's International Research Award. He has published extensively with over 300 papers in highly regarded international journals in global health sciences. Congratulations, Dr. Tran, and thank you for all that you do to advance transnational research. Our next recipient of the Shining Star Achievement in Research Award goes to, and no relation, Dr. Lee Tran. Dr. Tran is a professor in the School of Education at Deakin University in Australia and is an Australian Research Council Future Fellow. Dr. Tran has published extensively on internationalization of education. Whoops, I'm giving that secret away, haven't I? And international students, international graduate employability, Indo-Pacific student mobility, and comparative in Vietnamese higher education. Through her research and publications, she has theorized the key aspects of student mobility and contributed to transnational education research, as demonstrated through her series of articles, including Mobility as Becoming, Responsibility and Mobility, Agency and Mobility, Ethnicity and Identity of Mobile Students, Student Mobility as Public Diplomacy, and Student Mobility, Connectedness, and Identity. Her conceptualization of mobility as becoming and theorization of the lived experiences of international students have appeared in the British Journal of Sociology of Education, among other notable journals. Congratulations, Dr. Tran, and thank you so much for all that you do to advance transnational research. And now moving to our third category, the STAR Scholars Network also recognizes emerging scholars who have shown significant promise and commitment to transnational research. Our award recognizes emerging scholars in any field that have distinguished themselves as rising leaders in advancing transnational research. We actually have several recipients of this award. Our first recipient of the Rising Star Emerging Scholar Certificate Award goes to Dr. Raphael Pengelangen. Dr. Pengelangen is recognized for his outstanding scholarly work and legal practice. He earned his master's at the University of Oxford, where he focused on human rights, and completed his LLM at the University of Cambridge. He is currently the Associate Dean and Assistant Professor in Human Rights at OP Jindal Global Law School, India's premier school of law. Dr. Pengelangen has written extensively on transnational and international law with the Oxford University Press and the Cambridge University Press. He is the recipient of the Oxford Morris Prize in Human Rights, the Hague Academy of International Law Scholarship, and the Korean International Association Grant for Comparative Law. Congratulations, Dr. Pengelangen. We look forward to hearing more great things ahead from you. Thank you very much. And our next recipient of the Rising Star Emerging Scholar Certificate Award goes to Dr. Jasper Kuhn Ting Shea. Dr. Shea is an emerging scholar focused on international education, having earned his doctorate at the University of New South Wales. He has been actively engaged in the areas of international higher education, TESOL, the sociology of education, and learning design. He currently serves as the associate editor of the Journal of International Students. Dr. Shea is continuously conducting transnational research on improving the quality of internationalized higher education. His most recent work is a monograph titled International Student Mobility, Exploring Identities and Engagements. He is currently working on 2 research projects on the learning design for students from diverse backgrounds with scholars from the University of Hong Kong and the University of New South Wales. Congratulations, Dr. Shea. We look forward to more great things ahead from you as well. Thank you. And our next recipient of the Rising Star Emerging Scholar Certificate Award goes to Dr. Yao Tai Li. Dr. Li is an assistant professor of sociology at Hong Kong Baptist University. He holds a PhD in sociology from the University of California, San Diego. His recent publications offer a procedural and transnational understanding of migration decisions, group relations, integration, social mobility, and identity in trans-temporal, transcultural, and transspatial contexts. In particular, he is interested in examining how Chinese migrant workers see integration of the convertibility of migration experiences in a transnational context. In a recent article published in Current Sociology, he demonstrated the complex relationship between transnational ties, migrant subjective aspirations, and integration. This publication is of theoretical importance to the field of transnational migration. Congratulations, Dr. Lee. We look forward to more great things ahead from you as well. And finally, this award category also recognizes a current graduate student who has demonstrated significant promise to advancing transnational research through publications, leadership, or other relevant contributions. And so we would like to recognize one such graduate student today as recipient of the Rising Star Emerging Scholar Certificate. And I am delighted, and by the way, she's just terrific. I am delighted to announce that this award goes to Miss Maria Pilar Lorenzo. Miss Lorenzo is pursuing her PhD at Ghent University. Listen to this. She recently obtained a master's degree in international politics and an advanced master's degree in cultural anthropology and development studies at KU Leuven in Belgium, and a third master's degree in public administration in her home country at the University of the Philippines. Ms. Lorenzo is currently a fellow of the Regional Academy of the United Nations, a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, a research associate of the Philippines Society for Public Administration, and an associate member of the National Research Council of the Philippines. She is, like our other recipients tonight, is a recipient of numerous awards, including the recognition of the Waisili Women's Leadership Academy Alumni Network as one of the 2020 cohort of women's leaders in Southeast Asia. As a researcher, she's examining issues relating to her higher education regionalization processes and policies, governance, and social inequities. Her research has appeared in Channel News Asia, East Asia Forum, Modern Diplomacy, etc. So please join me in congratulating our graduate student recipient tonight, Ms. Lorenzo. We look forward to great things from you. And with that, and within my 10 minutes of allotted time, let me once again say a hearty congratulations to all of our recipients that we recognized here tonight, as well as the many, many more who were nominated for this award. Collectively, you do such important work to advance transnational research, and we're all very grateful and appreciative of your collective work. So thank you very much. If you would like to read more about our winners, please visit the Star Scholars website, where you can download full bios of these winners and the promising work that they're doing. Thank you very much, and back to you, Rajika.
Thank you so much, Tony, and my congratulations as well to everybody, to mentors like Elspeth, to colleagues who have won awards, to the next generation of international education leaders. A deep congratulations to you. And I just want to say that actually, I did not have the opportunity to introduce Tony, who himself is one of our most senior leaders in international education with over 25 years of experience and 3 Fulbright Awards, and most recently having founded and leading the Gateway International Group. So I did want to mention that as well. Now on to the moment that we have all been waiting for after the awards, of course. And I think, the most privileged role, but also the most daunting role here of introducing someone about whom so many wonderful things have already been said this evening. In particular, Dr. Giroux, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Raj, Dr. Elspeth Jones have talked profoundly about how Professor Noam Chomsky has influenced their lives, their learning, their careers, and anything that I say about Professor Chomsky by way of introduction would not do justice to his legacy and his contributions as a linguist, an author, a public intellectual. And suffice it to say that he is regarded as one of the greatest thinkers, philosophers, and influencers of our time. And as Dr. Bishta mentioned right at the top of this event, for all of the scholars present here today, Dr. Chomsky is widely regarded as the most cited scholar in modern history. He spent over 50 years at MIT and currently teaches at the Department of Linguistics at the University of Arizona. I also want to join Dr. Gowley and everybody else in wishing Professor Chomsky a very, very happy 92nd birthday. And with that, Professor Chomsky, I invite you to please address all of us.
How's that? Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'd like to begin by thanking so many of the speakers and even commentators on the chat line for the very kind thoughts. And I would, of course, like to join in congratulations for the very impressive recipients of the Star Scholars Award. It's an enormous privilege to be able to participate in granting of these awards, highly merited awards. I would also like to express my thanks for being able to participate with such a distinguished group of eloquent speakers, to hear these highly informative, perceptive comments on matters of critical importance to all of us. And several themes were emphasized that I think require our serious concern and attention. One of them, of course, is internationalism, the theme of this entire meeting, the participating institutions. A second was solidarity, recognition that internationalism means participation, engagement with one another from all corners of the world. And I'd like to add a third term, complete the triad in a rather grim way. A third term that belongs along with internationalism and solidarity is unfortunately extinction. We cannot overlook the fact that we are in a unique moment of human history. Humans have been on Earth for a few 100,000 years, last instant of evolutionary time. It's the first time in the history of life on Earth, almost 4 billion years. For all we know, the first time in the universe that there have been creatures with thoughts, creatures who can ponder the kinds of questions we are discussing. It's an astonishing miracle, the result of many pure accidents over the billions of years of life. But here we are in this instant of evolutionary time, which could very well be the final moment for the existence of thought on Earth. We are facing serious prospects of virtual extinction of the species. There are several major crises. We are living in a confluence of them, something which has never happened before in history, will never happen again unless we provide the right answers for them. And the right answers will be through internationalism, solidarity, and education, which is sorely needed. We don't have much time. We do have answers to all the crises we face, but it's not enough to have the understanding necessary to grasp the opportunities. One of them, which is prominent in our minds very naturally, is the pandemic. It's, of course, global, knows no boundaries. Will have to be solved internationally. We're facing very serious problems right now. Through international cooperation, vaccines may soon be available. One of the ones that's in the forefront was created by 2 Turkish immigrants to Germany, being marketed by international corporation. It's a symbol of what is happening. There's an international organization, COVAX, which is working on expediting international cooperation in development of the vaccine, and also on the critical problems of distribution, making sure that the vaccine will not be monopolized by those wealthy enough to appropriate it to themselves, but will be available to those who need it everywhere in the world. Regrettably, these noble aspirations are not being realized. The United States, as you know, has withdrawn from the conference, not participating. The United States and other wealthy countries are taking steps to gain control of the vaccine for themselves, not for those who need it. That must be overcome. That's a global problem, a problem of international solidarity, which should be foremost in our minds. The pandemic will end. We will emerge from this crisis at terrible cost and needless cost, as we can see from the experience of the countries, rich and poor, who have managed to deal with the crisis quite effectively. Others have not. They could. But sooner or later, we will emerge and enter a post-pandemic world. That post-pandemic world will be facing crises much more severe than the pandemic. The pandemic will be brought to an end. We will not be able to restore the Arctic ice packs that are melting before our eyes, opening the prospects for radical changes in the environment that will be highly destructive. Very recent studies have just been reported, scientific studies suggest that we may be approaching tipping points, points where these processes are irreversible. And we will be facing basically the termination of organized human life on Earth, facing catastrophes so enormous that we can barely imagine to contemplate their effects. There are others. We've lived for 75 years under the dark shadow of nuclear weapons. Those who have studied the grim record know that it's a virtual miracle that we've survived, not only from accidents, numerous accidents, but also occasional very reckless acts of leaders. Miracles don't go on forever. Some of the leading, most experienced specialists, conservative analysts, not given to exaggeration, like William Perry in the United States, former defense secretary, spent his life involved in nuclear weapons administration and control, warns that we are now, in his highly experienced view, facing a greater threat of nuclear war even than during the Cold War. And it's growing. The arms control regime, which offered some protection, has been dismantled by the US government in recent years. First, almost 20 years ago, the ABM treaty under the second Bush administration, under President Trump, the INF treaty, the Reagan-Gorbachev INF treaty, more recently the Open Skies Treaty, which traces back to General Eisenhower, President Eisenhower in the 1950s. The last treaty, the New START Treaty, is renewal of it is imminent. Either it will take place within the next few weeks, or that's terminated as well, and long, unconscionable delays. Won't talk about responsibility, but it's awesome. There's a third major crisis developing, namely the deterioration of democratic structures. It may seem a little strange to rank this alongside such awesome catastrophes as environmental destruction and terminal nuclear war, but it does belong there, not just my judgment, the expert judgment of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, leading American scientific journal. As I'm sure you all know, every year it sets the hands of a doomsday clock. Started in 1947, right after the two atom bombs, set then at 7 minutes to midnight. Midnight means termination. It's all over. The minute hand has oscillated over the years. 2 years ago, it reached the closest point that had ever been to midnight, 2 minutes. This last January, set every January, the analysts abandoned minutes, shifted to seconds, 100 seconds to midnight. The bulletin mentioned 3 major crises. One of them is the long-standing crisis of terminal nuclear war, now a threat that's increasing. The second is the growing threat of environmental catastrophe, very serious, short period ahead in which we have a chance to overcome it, move on to a much better world. If we don't do that, we will reach irreversible tipping points. The game is essentially over. The third crisis they mentioned is deterioration of democracy, which makes sense. The only hope for dealing with the major crises is an engaged, informed population dedicated to using the opportunities that do exist to deal with and these existential crises. Informed means educated. It means educated in not only the means that have to be applied, but the international solidarity that is necessary in order to implement these means. It means a society that is not only educated, but able to deliberate, to interact globally, in fact, to move towards solutions. Again, a problem of democracy on an international scale. And it is quite right to rank these 3 major issues as the crucial existential crisis that we face. Important to recognize that this generation, the generation of the young recipients of these awards, that generation has an awesome responsibility. It's the first generation in human history to face the question, will human civilization survive in any recognizable form? And it's also, again, the last generation that will face this crisis, because if they do not solve it, we're basically finished. Important to know that all of these crises have solutions. We know the answers to them. They're within reach, they're feasible, but it is not enough to have the knowledge. It is necessary to grasp and implement the opportunities. It's a tremendous responsibility, but an amazing challenge, exciting, amazing challenge. And we can only all hope with our firmest conviction that we will be up to mastering this confluence of problems which has created this unique, incredible moment of human history in which we are living and meeting. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you on this very exciting occasion.
Thank you, Professor Chomsky. Thank you very much. And thank you for taking the time at this late hour. I also heard from Uttam and others that you were coming directly from teaching a class. So it is you that we thank and are very grateful to. And I think your advice and observations are really critical about the three existential crises that we are facing, but that also the solution to all of the crises we are facing, including the pandemic this year, the solution to these problems is global through international collaborations, and is really a very strong argument for our field and what we do, where the idea of collaborating and international education is not just something that's feel good, but is really absolutely essential to solving the problems we are seeing today, and we will see in the future. So thank you very much for your remarks, and I'm going to now to close out this wonderful event, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chris Glass, who's the Associate Professor and Graduate Programs Director at Old Dominion University. He also serves as the Vice President of Research and Public Policy at the Star Scholars Network. And Dr. Glass is also the Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of International Students. And Dr. Glass, I will turn it over to you for a more formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Rajika, and thank you for those sobering words, Professor Chomsky, about these global crises. And I want to thank everyone who's joined us tonight at Shaping a Humane World: Global Perspectives on Higher Education, hosted by the Star Scholars Network. I would especially like to thank President Dr. Ghali and all of our distinguished guests who've joined us tonight. I also want to acknowledge 3 students who got up at 5:15 this morning in India, who have assisted with note-taking and technical responsibilities and keeping track of speakers. Tenzin Dolma, Sandel Argawal, and Purna Sharma, thank you very much for your assistance in making this event so successful. I have a few words to bring this wonderful event to a close. If you're like me, you're feeling connected, sobered, and inspired. You know, stars are both inspiring symbols, but also the substance of life. Stars are glimmers of hope that we see in the clear night sky. They help us navigate uncertainty across vast black oceans. Humans are infinitely diverse, but in some ways, we're all made of the same substance, stardust. We're all caught in an inescapable network, as Martin Luther King said, of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. In reflecting on the vastness of knowledge, Professor Chomsky once shared, you know, we all have little bits of understanding, glimpses, a little bit of light here and there, but there's a tremendous amount of darkness, which is a challenge. Each person who's joined us here today is connected to the Star Scholars Network. Each of us has a bit of understanding, a glimpse, a little bit of light. In a network, no one is at the top and no one is at the bottom. A network is a network because we are connected. Global connections are what bring us here. It's what we celebrate today with the Global Connections Awards. And it's what the Star Scholars Network is about in advancing upward academic mobility. Today, we leave connected, and tomorrow we continue our work that together we will shape a humane world. On behalf of the Star Scholars Network, I want to thank you for coming to this event. All of these events will be available via video recording on our social media channels, and we thank you very much for coming. And we thank all of our distinguished speakers for coming, and we thank Professor Noam Chomsky, and let's give him a final happy 92nd birthday. Thank you, Professor Chomsky, and we're glad we can celebrate this day with you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening, everyone. You may log off at your convenience or stick around, but thank you, Professor Chomsky, and thank you for everyone for coming on this wonderful day.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Professor Chomsky.
Happy
Professor
birthday,
Wright
Professor.
actually wanted to play a flute song of happy birthday.
Oh, play flute, sure.
Let's do that, because that represents all of us again. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, everybody. See you in India next year.
Yes,
Professor Siraj,
see
thank you
you
so
all
much
in
for
India next year.
Yes.
Yeah, hope
See you
so.
all.
That'll be wonderful.
Bye.
Wonderful,
Thank
wonderful.
you.
See you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Uttam. Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Guli.
Job well done.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. Professor Wright, you made it amazing. Thank you so much.
You're certainly welcome. Thank you, Dr. Goldie.
And Dr. Bista, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Great. Great.
Thank you, Dean Prime. Thank you, Panditji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Diodorf. Thank you, my colleagues. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you. Good night. Good morning.